Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, liberty-loving patriots. Welcome to the Lucid Libertarian with Lorianne show. Please be sure to tune in Sunday nights from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern, to discuss current events, news, and political opinion with Lucid Libertarian flair. Be prepared, folks. We often go into an optional extended third hour. This show advocates for liberty, freedom, our Constitution, Bill of Rights, and limited government, while speaking against corporate and government corruption, tyranny, and the globalist Great Reset agenda that undermines our precious American sovereignty. Discussions here are unscripted and free-flowing, so sometimes conversations wander off in unpredictable directions. Would you like to call in and share your thoughts and be part of the conversation? The number is 563-999-3698. Again, that is 563-999-3698. Press number 1 and you'll be added to the queue. Please also like and follow my Lucid Libertarian with Lorianne page on Facebook. You can help me battle their freedom-loathing censorship by visiting my page regularly, along with reacting, commenting, and sharing my posts. Thank you so much for listening, but please sit tight and don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few minutes to kick off the show.
NWCR Radio has been on the air since 2006 and with Conservative Nation Media since 2013. Now, NWCR continues as the owner of CNM with the news that the lamestream lying liberal media chooses not to tell you because the truth has nothing to do with the agenda that they are all pushing. We will tell the truth no matter what the liberal left has to say about it or what the truth is. Being banned off of YouTube for telling the truth with my updates and off of Facebook several times, we have our badges of honor that we keep pushing the envelope for on our show. My co-host, Lucid Libertarian Lorianne, and I, along with my band of callers, have great shows with great information for America on each episode. We are NWCR Radio, Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Blog Talk Radio through Conservative Nation Media, where America always wins.
I do. I care about future generations. I care about things. I want to do a song right now. I actually wrote this in April, and I'm going to keep singing it for a while because it makes me feel good. And so let's do it. Hi, everybody. Gather round. I'm here to give you anything you like. You want free college, energy, mortgages, whatever you like. You have come to the right place. Why? I'll tell you why. Who can take your money? With a twinkle in their eye? Take it all away and give it to some other guy. The government. The government can. And who can tax the sunrise? Who can tax the trees? Let you run a business and collect up all the fees. The government. Oh, the government can. government can, 'cause they mix it up with lies and make it all taste good. The government takes everything we make to pay for all of their solutions, like healthcare, climate change, pollution. Just throw away the Constitution. I wrote that, thank you. Who can give a bailout? Tell us to behave. And make the founding fathers roll over in their grave. I don't care if you hate me, I'm going to sing it anyway. Oh, the government can. And the government can, 'cause they mix it up with lies and make it all yummy, 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 yummy. The government takes everything we make. They're all power hungry and malicious. Their economics are fictitious. Soon we'll have to eat our fishes. Chicken. How's that taste, kids? Delicious. Who can be a failure? In so many ways. And instead of getting fired, hey, we'll give ourselves a raise. Kentucky, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, the government can. And the government can go to mix it up. I did the choreography myself. And your Uncle Sam can, 'cause he mixes it with lies to make himself look good. And I feel so good, 'cause the government says I should.
Hello, 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 all of you freedom and liberty lovers out there. We're waiting for some more people to make their way here. We got Robert from Conservative Nation Media in the chat room and on the switchboard, who I will unmute eventually. And we got a lot of stuff to cover. I was hoping that more people would be filing in, you know, the usual misfit gang. But hopefully they'll eventually make their way here. Happy Sunday. Lots of stuff to cover, especially since last week, you know, I had guests on, so I didn't cover a lot of news and stuff like that. But we got some breaking news happening that I want to get into. And, of course, you know, I got articles, I got clips, I got all kinds of stuff to try to cover tonight. And so plenty of things to have conversation starters with. So I thank everybody for, you know, making their way here. Anybody that's listening, feel free to call in. I still haven't gotten around to updating the phone number in my intros. So if you want to call in, please do so, 563-999-3485, and then press number 1. And I will bring you on in once I start bringing in callers. But I'm going to kick off the show with some breaking news happening today. And I don't know about you all, but I cannot help but smell the Mossad and or CIA involved in what's going on right now. Hey there, Boyd. I see that you just showed up in the chat room. So this is some breaking news, and so I'm going to go ahead and kick off this clip. This is from Fox News. Of course, this is all over the place right now. But search and rescue is search and rescue is underway in Iran because the Iranian president, along with several other Iranian officials, have apparently crashed. A helicopter crashed. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this Fox News clip so that you can all know what's going on here. And like I said, this seems really, you know, my conspiracy brain, of course, is going ding, 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 ding. I just can't help it. This is just too convenient. So here we go. I'm going to kick off this clip from Fox News and get the ball rolling here. Here we go.
Next we go live to Trey Yingst, who is following this story live from Israel. Trey. John, good evening. We are following this breaking news out of the region. Around 10 hours ago, a helicopter that was carrying Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi and his foreign minister disappeared. There were 3 helicopters and a convoy. They were returning from a meeting in Azerbaijan with Raisi's counterpart when one of these helicopters reportedly crashed in a mountainous region of northern Iran. There have been search and rescue efforts underway since that took place, and Iranian leadership is basically making statements to the public saying they have no further information on the location of the helicopter crash. Now, there have been a number of statements circulating online from the local Red Cross and from other search and rescue officials in Iran indicating they may have gotten a signal from one of the passengers of the aircraft, or they may have located the general region where the helicopter went down. None of that information is confirmed, though. The only thing we've been able to confirm is a statement from Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, who said, quote, "We hope and pray that God will return the president to the arms of the nation." Right now, there are 2 things on Iranian state media. One, they are showing images of this search and rescue operation in a mountainous region where there's a lot of fog and bad weather. And additionally, they are showing civilians across the country that are praying for Iranian leadership. A lot of questions tonight about how long this operation may take and what sort of efforts they will put into place to try and find the Iranian president. We do understand at this hour there is a Turkish drone over the northern part of Iran, surveilling the area, trying to gather any sort of information to help those rescue efforts on the ground. John?
What do you know about the weather forecast? Is it projected to lift, get a little better, Trey?
It is not, and some of the initial statements that we saw on Iranian state media from the rescuers who are operating in this area said that as they got to higher elevations, some of that rain was turning into fog and snow. And so that's a very challenging environment for these rescue teams to be operating in. Again, there's been a lot of mixed information floating around online and very limited details that we can actually confirm about the Iranian efforts to rescue or locate the president, Ibrahim Raisi, the foreign minister, and other top officials that were on this helicopter that was traveling from Azerbaijan to Iran when it reportedly crashed in the northern part of the country. John?
Reportedly, this was a Bell 212. Now, that's an American-built helicopter, but Iran has been under American sanctions since, 1979. It's hard to believe that they have the ability to conduct really good maintenance operations on their American-made equipment, Trey.
Absolutely, and a lot of the aircraft that the Iranian regime uses for their top officials comes from the Russians and is actually old Soviet gear that is being used by top officials in Iran. And so there will be many questions about why the Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi, was on an aircraft that was out of date and not with the latest and greatest technology to communicate if there were any sort of emergency, or primarily to be able to locate such an aircraft. Right now, these rescue teams appear to be working blind in the mountainous region of northern Iran. They have no pings yet as to where this location is, and so they're trying to gather as much information as they can. Now, many allies of the Iranians have reached out to offer assistance. Like I said, there is a Turkish drone currently circling the area of northern Iran where officials believe that this helicopter went down. Additionally, our producer telling me at this hour that the Russians have offered a team to travel to Iran and try to assist with locating this aircraft. And again, this is still a search and rescue operation. We've not yet heard anything else from Iranian officials to indicate this has entered a new phase. But again, the weather, a key issue here, and some of that initial video from rescue teams on the ground indicates it's very foggy in this mountainous region where they do believe this helicopter went down.
Yeah, John? Very dense fog, obviously, in that footage you're sending back, and I certainly wouldn't want to be flying in it. Trey Yingst in Tel Aviv, Israel, keeping an eye on that story for us. If you learn more, get back to us immediately. Thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most.
All right. So this is actively going on right now, and I definitely wanted to open the show with this. I mean, I am pretty suspicious here. I can't help it. So I'm looking at an article. Where did I put it? Where is it? Yeah, so there are other people besides the Iranian president. Iran's foreign minister, the governor of Iran's East Azerbaijan province, and other officials and bodyguards. So we don't really know other officials. What does that really mean? I just can't help but be suspicious about this. I mean, I get it. Okay, so, the cover story is that, it's bad weather. They're in a mountainous region. They're in this helicopter. And so, as much as I want to believe that it's bad weather that caused this chopper to go down, I just can't help but think how convenient this is to have the level of the high-level people of Iran together in one place, in one chopper, and for it to go down. I just, like I said, I can't help but, smell some intelligence agencies' involvement in this. And I like that they brought up, it was this Fox News clip that brought up the fact that they're in an American-made helicopter. That right there makes me kind of shake my head, too. Why would they have these top officials, like that clip said, why would they have all of these top officials in an American-made helicopter when we know, that they've had to have, more up-to-date, more advanced, helicopters and equipment and things coming from Russia. So, I mean, I am just baffled at this. So I wanted to get into this. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Robert and Boyd. And, of course, there's lots of other stuff to get to as well. But, what I had planned, and then this story popped up, and I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. I changed plans on what I'm going to open my show with. So welcome on board.
Hello, lady.
Boyd and Robert. Hey, Robert. How's it going?
Oh, it's going pretty good. The one thing that I've been watching that since this morning, and the first reports that I saw on it was that the helicopter just did a hard landing. There was nothing else involved in it. Then all of a sudden the reports that he hadn't been found and that they couldn't get to him and they hadn't found any bodies. Now that Russia has offered to help on this, I think we should, but we should be very, very careful with that. And if we go out with Iranians only to make sure that if we find them and they're dead, they know immediately that it wasn't us who did it. Because I can see some conspiracies going on this thing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's anybody's guess. It just, like I said, it just seems way too convenient. Especially, with Iran's involvement in supporting Hamas and bombing Israel, and this be a really good form of retaliation for that, don't you think?
Yeah, and I wouldn't put it past Hamas to do something like this just to start trouble between the United States and Iran, or get a war going that they've already started.
Exactly. I mean, who knows? And and we got to be careful too of what the media tells us. Like you said, when the reports were first coming out, it was a hard landing. I mean, why minimize it right out the get-go? And then, guess what? It wasn't just a hard landing. It's pretty much crashed somewhere in the mountains, and we can't find them. We don't know where they are. We're not getting any beacons from them. That kind of thing. So really, really, my conspiracy brain, is just firing off like crazy right now.
Yeah, same here. But there were 3 helicopters that said, the reports that I've heard from it said that 2 of them got back.
Now, lately, since they've been reporting that they haven't been able to find the president, I haven't heard too much about those other two.
That's interesting. Because, yeah, I mean, I just saw this and watched a couple of videos on it, and so I didn't realize that there was like a convoy.
Yep.
And so I think it's interesting that, you know, if there were two other helicopters that did make it back successfully, well, who were those lucky people? You know, why did they make it and not the one with these top officials on it, including the Iranian president? I mean, this is just like, it just makes like the level of it just seems so like, wow, you know?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I was saying that it'd probably be good if we offered the help, but we'd have to be very damn careful about how we did that and who we were with when we searched.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and especially, I mean, I guess if, you know, if they're, you know, this chopper that went down is American made, then it would stand to reason that the U.S. military would be a valuable resource in how to locate an American-made, you know, what its capabilities are, when it was built, that sort of thing. Because, you know, if we built it, we know it inside and out better than they do, right?
Yep.
And so maybe there are capabilities that maybe they don't know, you know, or that they're aware of, is to be able to help locate this thing.
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking maybe. Oh, go ahead.
Just idiots flying. That's all it was. Idiots flying. Yep. They flew into bad weather with helicopters that probably weren't rated for flying in that weather, and they found a solid piece of cloud to fly into.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably just that frickin' simple. And if there was more helicopters with them, the other two helicopter pilots were a little bit smarter, turned around and left, and decided not to go fly into that rock.
Simple. I hope it's that simple, but, you know, when it comes to these kinds of things, it rarely is that simple, you know. Well,
you know, it's like Kobe Bryant. They flew when they shouldn't have been, into weather that they shouldn't have flown into, and they found a solid piece of cloud, you know, and they flew right into it and crashed. It happens all the time.
Yep.
You know.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, especially, you know, helicopters can be more prone to that, you know, with bad weather conditions and uplift, especially in the mountains. You just don't know. You know, you can turn around, you know, you can be flying and you can come around a cliff on the mountain and all of a sudden, whoo, huge gust of wind or something, and away you go. So I don't know, man, but this is pretty crazy news.
Yeah.
Where's the rest of the misfits tonight? It's just us so far. Everybody must be busy.
I would sure like to hear Sarge's take on this one.
Well,
yeah, no doubt.
You know, I'm not gonna. You know, we got initial reports. They were flying in an American-made helicopter. Big deal. You can buy them a dime a dozen around the world.
Yep.
You know, so that's nothing. They said it was a Bell 212. So a Bell 212 is one of the Vietnamese era.
Vietnamese era.
Hueys. Okay. So, you know, they were flying an older helicopter, and any number of things could have gone wrong with that thing. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, but it kind of
maintenance could have been lacking on the bird. And, if it had the Iranian president on, he could have said, keep going to the pilot when the pilot said, well, we ought to turn around. And the pilot forgot that he is the man who is in charge in the helicopter, plain and simple. It doesn't matter if the president's on board or not. The pilot is the man in charge.
Yep.
And if he didn't have the balls enough to tell the pilot to turn around, to tell the president he's turning around, that's his problem.
Yep. Absolutely. But you got to stop and think about it, though. Why was the president of Iran in such an old helicopter? You would think that they would have him in one of the newest ones that they had.
Well, maybe that was one of the newest ones that they had. I mean, hell, Iran's still flying F-14s, and F-4 Phantoms, that they got from us before the Shah went away.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I think whatever we do, we need to be careful. And with Biden at the helm, I don't see that happening.
Oh God. Yeah, I know. I have zero faith in anything that Biden decides to do.
First off, how are they going to blame us? How are they going to blame the U.S. over some idiot flying into a mountain with a helicopter just because the helicopter was made in the United States? Come on now.
Never know.
Russian. Hey, listen. Russian, French, and everybody else who builds helicopters around the world, their helicopters fly right into mountains and do the same goddamn thing, go crash and burn.
Absolutely.
I hope you're right, Boyd. I hope it really is that simple. But then again, would we ever really even know? You know what I mean? Whatever the true story is, we'd probably never know it. If there was a conspiracy, if this was, Mossad, CIA, or somebody else, working in cooperation as retaliation against Iran, we'll probably never know it. That'll be hush-hush. And if we do know it, it won't come out until years later when nobody cares. It'll be, long forgotten by then.
Well, it's like this. Years from now, nobody will care. Well, I'm already at that point. I don't care.
Me too.
So what? Airplanes and helicopters, they crash all the fucking time, for a multitude of reasons, So the only thing that makes this sensational news is because supposedly the Iranian president was on board. Just like the helicopter that crashed there in California. It would have been just a helicopter crash and killed 5 people. But no, not this particular helicopter crash, because Kobe Bryant was on board.
Yep.
When it crashed. That's what we got going here. Sensationalizing the news. Yeah, okay, the Iranian president crashed in a helicopter, and the helicopter happened to be an American-made helicopter. Big fucking deal. What's it going to change what's it going to change in the aspect of everything that's going on over there?
Probably nothing.
No.
Well, it just kind of, if those people are dead, we're talking about the Iranian president and the foreign minister. and other officials that we don't know of yet. And if they're all dead, then who replaces them? So that's the other question. Who's going to be stepping into those shoes?
Yeah, that could be scary.
Who knows? What's going to happen in Iran if their whole government was supposedly wiped out? Who knows? Who cares? I mean, here's the other thing. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, they are never on the same airplane, period. Even if both of them are going to do an appearance in the same function anywhere, in the world, they both travel on separate airplanes.
Yeah, and that's
never do you put, all those people on one airplane. There was a that's a fault of the government and of their flight, parameters and stuff like that. That's their own damn fault that they lost the president and possibly the foreign minister and and somebody else, because they put them all on the same fucking airplane or aircraft.
Yep.
One goes down, it takes them all. You never do that. Never.
Unless they're trying to trap somebody into a war. That could possibly be too, knowing those guys. But I'll be right back.
How are they going to justify dragging us into a fucking war because a helicopter crash? It could have been a Russian helicopter.
Oh, I didn't say
all they're doing is sensationalizing the fact that it may have been an American helicopter, an American-built helicopter.
Yeah, and then on top of that, we really don't know what the heck happened there. He could have just been assassinated, and then they decided to make this story up to let the world know that this is what happened when it might not have happened at all. That way.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was like when Ron Brown went down in that C-130 over there in was it Kosovo or some place like that? You know, and everybody on board was killed, but they happened to find a 45 slug hole in the back of Ron Brown's head.
Yeah.
So, what the hell?
Yep. Well, we can always hope that it's not anything sinister. It's just an accident that happened.
That's true. Or, even if it is just an accident that happened due to the bad weather, pilot made a bad decision to go into it instead of turning around to, avoid bad weather. Whatever the case may be, it can still be used, never let a tragedy go to waste, right?
Well, yeah, okay. Why wasn't the Ayatollah on that bird with the president and the foreign minister?
I don't know.
I mean, that would have made.
I don't know exactly what business they were doing or conducting.
I'm sure if Ayatollah Mike gets on, and then on here we'll hear all sorts of other different views and conspiracies and all this other stuff. But as right now, a helicopter crashed. Big deal. President of Iran was on it. Well, okay, interesting. But, conspiracy? Fuck that shit.
We'll find out. So I'm going to shift gears here a little bit.
Where in the hell were they going? What was their destination? You know.
Let's
Why
see.
didn't they?
Razi, who is the president, was traveling in Iran's East Azerbaijan province. State TV said that it's called a hard landing. Happened near Julfa, a city on the border with the nation of Azerbaijan, about 375 miles northwest of the Iranian capital, Tehran. And I'm scrolling down to see if this article says trying to see if it says what the purpose of the trip was. Couldn't do the heavy mess. La, 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 la. Let's see. Razi, 63, a hardliner who formerly led the country's judiciary, is viewed as a protege of Khamenei, and some analysts have suggested that he could replace the 85-year-old leader after his death or resignation. Razi had been on the border with Azerbaijan early Sunday to inaugurate a dam with Azerbaijan's president Ilham Aliyev. I just can't pronounce these names. I know, I just totally screwed it up. The dam is the third one that the two nations built on the Aras River. The visit came despite chilly relations between the two nations, including over a gun attack on the Azerbaijan's embassy in Tehran in 2023. And Azerbaijan's diplomatic relations with Israel, which Iran's Shiite theocracy views as its main enemy in the region. Iran flies a variety of helicopters in the country, but international sanctions make it difficult to obtain parts for them. Its military air fleet also largely dates back to before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. IRNA published images it described as Razi taking off in what resembled a Bell helicopter with a blue and white paint scheme previously seen in published photographs. Let's see. So that's apparently what the purpose was they're these two countries cooperating with each other to build these dams. So, yeah, I'll put the article, it's an AP article, into the chat room here. Donnie's here in the chat. Hey there, Donnie. I see ya. Good. And so no more crackling and stuff. I did hear back from Blog Talk earlier today that my issues should be resolved after I complained about 2 weeks in a row of the popping and crackling. So I'm glad that my audio sounds all right. And so I'm going to shift gears here, and I'm going to play a clip from J.P. Sears. It's been a while since I've done a J.P. Sears. But this is what I was going to start the show out with before that news clip and about that chopper crash with the Iranians on board. I see Sarge has made his way into the chat room as well. Hopefully he shows up in the switchboard. Same with Donnie. So I'm going to kick off this J.P. Sears one. One of his latest. This is from the 11th, so a little over a week or so. But I love his true, the lies you can depend on, his kind of fake news, the way he does it. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. I like it when he does one of those. So here we go. It's only about 7.5 minutes long or so, and then we'll get back into the conversation, and hopefully we'll get more of the Misfit gang coming on in, and we can move on with all of the other wonderful things and topics and stuff that I have in my treasure chest. So here we go.
Here's trusted Democrat Governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, saying what she thinks out loud.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things.
That didn't, that's probably not what she meant. Let's take a closer look at what she meant.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things. And I want the world open up to all of them, because when you have their diverse voices innovating solutions through technology.
Good evening and welcome to Lies You Can Trust. Some of these are being pulled off the market for blood clots and whatnot. So tonight we have to do damage control, as it turns out what we've been telling you hasn't been absolutely true. But don't worry, we won't admit we were wrong, because it was the best information we had at the time. We'll also be giving you a rundown on what the world's biggest hypocrite has done, but at least he refuses to apologize for it. But before we get to that, here's what your kids will become if you send them to college.
Do you know what makes me special? I'm a queer. And I'm a
Bright future they have, where they'll be able to spell at least some words almost correctly. It's also exciting to see a lot of college students bringing back trends from the 1930s. Please do send your kids to college. It's for the greater good. And now to the main story. Do you remember the pandemic that we did? It was pretty good, right? The pandemic that saw the flu coincidentally drop to almost non-existent levels because of the science? Well, after years of vile conspiracy theorists touting dangerous misinformation where they'd call life-saving protocols things like clot shots, those shots are now being taken off the market because it turns out they cause clots. Specifically, AstraZeneca has to take theirs off the market after the company admitted that it causes rare side effects. And please note, those side effects didn't exist until the company had to admit it. Let's hear more.
AstraZeneca is moving towards withdrawing its COVID-19 vaccine worldwide after admitting to a rare side effect. There's a link between the jab and blood clotting in parts of the brain or stomach that can cause long-term disability or death. The drug maker applied to stop use in the European Union with plans to do the same around the rest of the globe. Our regulator discontinued the vaccine last year.
Those rare side effects can be pretty common, unfortunately. Now, one of the faces that you were gullible enough to trust when it came to making decisions about your body is Chris Cuomo. Cuomo, before receiving a career promotion by being fired by CNN, regularly spent airtime demanding that you get vaccinated while staying away from ivermectin. And now Cuomo has admitted that he got sick from the very thing he was promoting, and he takes ivermectin. Rules for thee, but not for me is always exciting. Let's hear what Chris said recently.
I'll tell you something else that's going to get you a lot of hits. I am taking a, what do they call it? Like a regular dose, whatever. They're trying to build up of ivermectin. Ivermectin was a boogeyman early on in COVID.
You couldn't talk about it.
That was wrong. We were given bad information about ivermectin. The real question is, why?
Well, Chris, it turns out why we were given bad information about ivermectin is because you gave it to us.
Ivermectin, a dewormer, really? Yeah. They need to be called out in shame. So resistant to reason and reliant on lies that they would rather try poison. You're not a horse. You are not a cow. Taking a drug that's given to livestock as an anti-parasitic, it doesn't work. Please don't take it.
But you'll be relieved to know that Chris Cuomo has offered no apology or taken any responsibility. And that's why his lies are lies you can trust. After all, he was just innocently shaming people into taking shots from pharmaceutical companies that have a proven track record of safely and effectively putting the health and best interests of people first. Meanwhile, Pfizer has settled in 10,000 lawsuits against them for failing to warn people about the cancer risks in their safe and effective drug called Zantac. I still think they should have mandated that one too. This just in! Chemtrails definitely don't exist. If they did, don't you think you'd be able to see them? And in keeping up with the times at We Lie to You News, we've recently committed to hiring more women. Not out of social pressure where we're just trying to make the optics look right. We're doing it because we know women automatically bring more to the table than men do. So for today's weather report, let's throw it over to our new meteorologist, Kelly. Kelly, how's the weather looking today?
I don't know what's going on.
Didn't think you would, Kelly. And finally, the Boy Scouts of America have gone non-binary so they can be more inclusive by changing their name to Scouting America. Some say the Boy Scouts are just caving to woke culture after they had to pay $2.5 billion in lawsuits related to sexual abuse of boys, which is another lovely dimension of woke culture. But now, girls, non-binary, unicorns, trans, agender, and furry children will all have the opportunity to be abused by the organization, and that is inclusivity. That's it for today's news. Remember to vote blue in the upcoming election so we can finally end racism.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is.
Just like she's doing. Good night.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. I put the link to it too so that you can get the visuals. But yeah, I love his lies you can trust. "Quote unquote" news.
Yeah, it's great.
It's pretty comical. Yeah, he does a good job on those. And I still wish, I'm one podcaster or vodcaster that I miss that I used to play all the time. What's her face? She's been on a hiatus for a while after becoming a mother and things and moving and all that kind of stuff. So it's probably been like 3 months since she's done a video. I miss hers too. I kind of equated her to being the female version of JP Sears. So I'm always still kind of seeing, checking once in a while on her channel to see if she does, do anything and comes out of her hibernation. But unfortunately, that has not been the case. So, yeah, I just kind of find it funny that Cuomo, who is so vocal about, not taking ivermectin and, for... you're not livestock. Don't take it. This is ridiculous. Blah, blah, blah. And now he's like, yeah, by the way, I got the shot, and I'm having some side effects from it and not feeling good. And so now I'm taking regular doses of the ivermectin. Oh, the irony. Gotta love it.
Yeah,
Which,
you were
by
talking
the way, what you've been seeing in the news lately, we got to be scared again, everybody. We got to be scared because there are summer variants of COVID now.
Oh,
so we got to beware. Wear your mask, everybody. Get those masks back on. Get your 20th booster shot.
Yeah, I think it's about time I started doing my daily updates again. It's been about a month or so since I did my last one. I think I'm going to start doing them again. This is getting bad.
Yeah, it's just like this never-ending stupidity, and it seems like more and more we're being validated. It's like more and more this stuff is coming out. And more we're like, yeah, I told you so. Yeah, I told you so. Yeah, this isn't new information for us.
Yep.
And so, you know what? And then there's still these liberals, like Liberal Dan, for example, who has a show on BTR and then simulcasted on YouTube. Him and his followers will still stand by getting that jab and wearing those masks. It doesn't matter how much comes out, that it was useless. all of it was useless. It doesn't matter how much comes out of how ineffective the shots are, or how many side effects there are, how many deaths there are associated. It doesn't matter. They are going to stand by it no matter what. You know, there are still a lot of people out there that are just so, you know, they are just like their brains are just blocking any kind of actual factual information still, in order to justify how they treated those of us that already knew the truth. You know, those of us that were saying this is, you know, wearing face masks all the time is not only beyond useless, but contributes to, you know, a lot of people that still ended up getting COVID or whatever, getting sick, that were diligent maskers. Let's see, what were the listed secondary causes of death? Pneumonia. You know, it was one of them. Well, yeah, that happens when you're doing nothing but breathing in, you know, everything that you exhale, and that mask gets moist and moist and more moist, and it becomes a breeding ground for that kind of stuff, you know. So, yeah, you end up getting sicker. Oh, you know, like we're trying to tell you guys. But no, you know, they'll still stand by those damn masks, man. You know, that masks will save everybody. Well, maybe not, you know, because the most avid maskers, you know, wore masks even in their own house, around their own family, still ended up getting it and still ended up, you know, dying and everything. And probably even, you know, I think that this long COVID is partially, if not fully, part of that mask wearing, you know, that long COVID, the reduction of oxygen, the breathing in your own exhaling, all of that stuff, and then you still ended up getting sick, and then you recover and you have this long COVID. Well, you know, maybe it's because you were wearing that mask all the time, especially dirty masks, you know, where you're wearing it 24/7 and you only wash that mask once a week. Well, could that maybe be a contributing factor? You know?
Yeah, if that much, if they wash it that much. But, you know, it's funny because we've still got things going on that are still going against us who said, hey, now, wait a minute, masks are not doing any good. You know, I was kicked off of YouTube for saying that masks were no good, and I used a respiratory doctor who had been in the field for 30 years saying the same thing, and I got kicked off of YouTube. I'm still trying to get back on there, and they won't let me. So they're still doing it, trying to squelch the people who are trying to tell the truth.
Yeah, they just don't want to give it up. You know, they really don't, because they want to use it, because now we got the scary new bird flu that we're supposed to all be afraid of. So, you know, that's the next thing to be prepared for. You know, remember when you know, we had part of the reason why meat prices went up so high, especially for poultry, was because of these bird flu outbreaks, where just one of those chickens in a flock of thousands tested positive, then they had to cull the entire flock. And this was happening all, you know, time and time and time again. I mean, millions upon millions upon millions of birds were culled because of it. And so now there's this new bird flu, you know, that's going around, and so be prepared for that. You know, as if grocery prices aren't bad enough, you know, I think they're going to want to make it even worse by having another round of this shit.
Absolutely. They just can't seem to learn.
Well, you got to remember that the bird flu is going to come right across and go to humans. And it's going to happen probably around September. You know,
just before the election.
That's right.
Oh, exactly. There's got to be at least one or two good crises that need to be manufactured just in time for the election. I think we already kind of have an idea that that's going to happen. Then in other news, I also wanted to talk about the Libertarian National Convention. I wanted to mention this because, of course, I'm Libertarian. So the Libertarian National Convention is happening May 23rd through 26th in Washington, D.C. And I was looking at the schedule. So some key things to pay attention to. Obviously, I think, the Thursday the 23rd, not a lot of major things happening, kind of rolling everybody in. There's a vice chair debate, stuff like that. And then Friday, some notable things from 3:30 to 4:30 Eastern Time, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speaking. So that's something that I want to try to pay attention to see what he has to say. And then after that, there'll be the vice presidential debate. And then after that, Vivek Ramaswamy is going to debate the vice presidential candidate, I guess. So that's something I'm going to pay attention to, too, because Vivek Ramaswamy used to be Libertarian. And so I'm kind of interested to see what happens when, he has a back and forth with the eventual vice presidential candidate of the Libertarian Party. Then I just love it. From 9 o'clock p.m. until 2 p.m. is Enemies of the State Dance Party. I love how they phrase that. Enemies of the State Dance Party. Oh, that cracks me up. And then, of course, Saturday the 25th, from 12 to 1:30, Dave Smith. He's a pretty prominent libertarian. He's a comedian libertarian. I follow him. He actually had a interview with Tucker Carlson. I still haven't watched that interview, but I intend to. And then from 6 to 7:30 is the presidential debate between the Libertarian presidential candidates. After that, from 8 until 10 p.m., again, this is Eastern Time, that's when President Donald Trump will be speaking for 2 hours. And they've been fielding, there's like a vote on the topics that the Libertarians want to have him discuss as well. And but the thing is it costs $10 to even vote. So they have a link to the Trump topics, and let's see, as of 5/6 of the 6th, I don't know, but yeah, it costs $10 to even vote for it. That free Ross Albright, 12% free Julian Assange, 9% defend the Second Amendment, only 4%. That really struck me because I'm like, why? Okay, you have Donald Trump himself who literally said, he was promoting red flag states to get red flag laws, literally said, take the guns first, deal with due process in the courts later, and only 4% of people want him to talk about the Second Amendment? That kind of surprises me. Peace, not war, 13%. Abolish the deep state, 11%. Stop runaway inflation, 3%. End the Fed, 13%. No more foreign aid, 9%. No central bank digital currencies, only 1%. Eliminate the federal income tax, 8%. And other topics, 19%. So who knows? So it'll be interesting to see, what Trump does or what he speaks to. And I'm hoping that he's confronted with some of the, with some of the libertarians there on it. And instead of, turning it into, instead of it being the libertarian national convention, it turns into a Trump rally. Anywho, and then Sunday, on Sunday from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. is Peter McCullough, Dr. Peter McCullough. That'll be another interesting one. And then, of course, then there's like the presidential gala and all kinds of stuff. And there are several speakers that will be in attendance in addition to them. Spike Cohen, previous vice presidential candidate on the Libertarian Party in 2020. He's one of the speakers, and so I'll be interested in what he has to say, and I did have him on my show one time back in the day. And let's see what else we got going on. Dave Smith, Spike Cohen, Peter McCullough, Robert Breedlove from Bitcoin. So hopefully most of the stuff will be available to view and stream. But we shall see. Let's see who we got here. We still have just a small group here of people tuned in. So where is everybody today? We got Donnie in the chat. We got Sarge in the chat. But still on the line, it's just Robert, Boyd, myself. There's a Skype number that's sitting by listening. So there's that. So I covered the Libertarian Convention that's going to be happening Memorial Day weekend. It'll be interesting to see what transpires there. Then, what else do I have in my little arsenal of stuff to talk about? I got really actually loads of stuff. There was another thing that I came across, that the scam of recycling, which I thought is pretty interesting. It's a short clip, but it's one of those things. Let's see. Recycling fraud. This was from April, actually, on CBS. And I've talked about this before as well. It was back when Trump was president, and he started, putting some tariffs and whatever on China. And then there were changes to even how we do our recycling and what can be accepted and not accept. Egg cartons in recycling anymore. We had to, you always have to, if you keep the lid on your milk jug, then the milk jug just goes into the garbage because there's nobody's taking the lids off. All these kinds of things. And I didn't know, then that most of our recycling was shipped off to China. And China was the number one recipient of the stuff that we recycle. And I didn't know that until that time. I was like, whoa, really? And so this kind of came up as well. And so I wanted to kick it off real quick because, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but if you're like me and you're paying for garbage and recycling pickup, this is a service that we're paying for, and I make an effort to separate out, my paper and my box, and I cut down my boxes. That's another thing you gotta do. Break down your boxes, rinse out all of your plastic jugs and and recyclables. You got to rinse them out because in your plastic containers, like from takeout food and whatnot, you got to rinse all that stuff out because if it has dried food on there or oily or whatever food contaminants, that also just goes into the landfill and doesn't get recycled. So you got to take out do all of these things. And this is a service that we're paying for to pick up our recyclables. And so I'm going to kick off this clip a little bit because it has to do with that. This is something practical that a lot of us deal with. So here we go.
Many of us try to do the right thing. We dutifully separate plastics from our trash to recycle. But are we really making a difference? As Ben Tracy learned, the truth is complicated.
So many people, they see the recyclable label and they put it in the recycle bin.
Jan Dell is a former chemical engineer who has spent years telling an inconvenient truth.
For those of us who are constantly putting our plastic into the blue recycling bin and assuming it's going to the recycling place, what do we not know?
You're being lied to. The vast majority of plastics are not recycled. They're just not.
About 48 million tons of plastic waste is generated in the U.S. each year. Only 5 to 6% of it is actually recycled. The rest ends up in landfills or is burned.
All these plastic pouches that you get in e-commerce.
Dell founded a nonprofit to fight plastic pollution. Inside her garage in Southern California are all sorts of plastic with those little arrows on it that make us think they can be recycled.
It means you're being fooled.
Those so-called chasing arrows started showing up on plastic products in 1988, part of a push to convince the public that plastic waste wasn't a problem because it can be recycled.
They didn't really need it to work, right? They needed people to believe that it was working.
Davis Allen is an investigative researcher with the Center for Climate Integrity. In a new report called The Fraud of Plastic Recycling, it accuses the plastics industry of a decades-long campaign to mislead the public about the viability of plastic recycling, despite knowing the technical and economic limitations that make plastics unrecyclable at a large scale.
They couldn't ever lie about the existence of plastic waste, but they created a lie about how we could solve it, and that was recycling.
So if plastic recycling is technically difficult, if it doesn't make a whole lot of economic sense, why has the plastics industry pushed it?
The plastics industry understands that selling recycling sells plastic, and they'll say pretty much whatever they need to say to continue doing that. That's how they make money.
Plastic is made from oil and gas and comes in thousands of varieties, most of which cannot be recycled together.
The possibilities of plastic.
But in the 1980s, when some municipalities moved to ban plastic products, the industry began promoting the idea of recycling as a solution.
What we see in here is a widespread knowledge that plastics recycling was not working.
Allen showed us documents and meeting notes they obtained from public archives and from a former staff member of the American Plastics Council. At a trade conference in Florida in 1989, an industry leader told attendees, recycling cannot go on indefinitely and does not solve the solid waste problem. In 1994, an Exxon executive told the staff of the Plastics Council that when it comes to recycling, we are committed to the activities, but not committed to the results.
They always kind of viewed recycling not as a real technical problem that they needed to solve, but as a public relations problem.
The industry just launched a new ad campaign called Recycling is Real.
Recycling is very real.
And says it's investing in what it calls advanced recycling technology. An industry trade group responded to Sunday morning in a statement calling the Center for Climate Integrity's report flawed and outdated, and says plastic makers are working hard to change the way that plastics are made and recycled.
It's the same process they were trying it 30 years ago. And my response to that is it's science fiction.
Jan Dell doesn't believe plastic will ever be truly recyclable. Plastic production is set to triple by 2050, and with so much plastic waste piling up on land and sea, more than 170 countries are working on a United Nations treaty to end plastic pollution. In a letter to President Biden about the negotiations, the plastics industry says it opposes any bans on plastic production, but supports more recycling.
The only thing the plastics industry has actually recycled is their lies over and over again.
Kind of jaw-dropping. You know, all this effort and money that goes into recycling, and only like maybe 5%, like they said, 5, maybe 10% actually gets recycled, and the rest just goes into the landfills or ends up in the oceans or whatever. That really seems, I mean, what a huge moneymaker that is. If you think about it, you know, how many of us have these blue bins? How many of us are paying for that service? That's billions of dollars.
You know,
going into
it's just
this.
like
multi-billion-dollar fraud.
It's just like that global warming thing. Shoot, we're paying for stuff that isn't going to make a hill of beans bit of difference.
Exactly, and make things worse. You know, oh, we're green energy. You know, let's have all of these wind farms. You know, let's use all of this land and have this huge fields of nothing. You know, and even in the oceans, we'll put them in the oceans of these humongous, you know, windmills. And are they made out of recyclable products? Nope. You know, they're insanely expensive. And then when they need to be replaced, they can't even be recycled. You know, the fraud just goes on and on. Same thing with the solar panels. You know, and when they come to their end of life, then what? Can those be recycled? And no, you know, I mean, and that's supposed to solve the climate change problem? Come on now. You know, there's so many levels of fraud going on. It's sickening. I'm floored by it, really. You know, it's just these levels of scams going on, and nobody is accountable. We're paying for it. Governments help fund it, you know. And it's all for nothing. It's all just a bunch of bullshit.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not bullshit. Ask Al Gore. He's made billions.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's gotten rich off of this stuff. And then he'll still go and preach it, you know.
While not doing anything, you know, that he says we need to do. He's doing just the opposite.
Exactly.
You know, one of the things that I was in one of the new ads that I'm doing for Conservative Nation Media, I quote Thomas Sowell, who says, "It is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong."
Yep. Got that right.
You know, and the one thing they also won't acknowledge that the Earth is greening up very, very nicely with all the CO2 in the air.
Imagine that. It's kind of funny how that works, huh? And I'm trying to find this other story that I wanted to talk about too. But yeah, keep going. I'm digging because I uploaded a clip that I'm trying to find. At least I'm pretty sure I uploaded it. Was another scam having to do with the border. Maybe I didn't upload it. Oh, I don't think I did. Whoopsies. I gotta find it. It was a redacted news. That just came out. Let me grab it. Core. I just did it yesterday. And I watched it, and I thought that I downloaded it, but apparently I didn't. I'm going to do that real quick. Because he'll explain it a heck of a lot better than I will. And there's like more, you know, because we've talked about like, I think it was a couple of weeks back, Shit. Hang on. It was a couple weeks back that I talked about like the homeless industrial complex, and the millions and millions of dollars. It's the whole we got to solve this homeless problem and blah 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 is just another way of money laundering is what's going on, and I need to quit my downloader and reopen it, and hopefully I'll be able to do it. I've reached my daily limit, but usually the trick is to close it out and start it over again so that I can bypass that issue. Control V, enter. All right, let's see if we can get this going here. Okay, I got to close it and actually end the task because it's apparently running in the background. So I got to do a little techie tweaking and open up my task manager and go into the background process to end it. Because, of course, I don't pay for it. So the free version of Vidly only allows you to do 5 downloads at a time, on a... Where are you, Vidly? Trying to find it. I don't want to have to reboot my computer to do it. Usually, I'm able to just go in and end the task and then fire it back up again, and then it works. Anywho... Not seeing it. Okay, so it's not running as a background service. I think they must have changed something to hide it, make it less easy to be able to do it. What? This is why I wish I had a mixer, that I could just play the stuff and not have to worry about downloading it and uploading it and all that good junk. Bastard. Anyway, well, since it's not letting me, pretty much what's going on is with all of these, it's with the Biden administration, this is like all the way at the top, and they are using nonprofit organizations, NGOs. They are partnering with all of these NGOs, particularly religious-based ones. What was the name of one of them?
Catholic Social Services.
Jewish Family and Community Services, then Lutheran Family Services, there's a Catholic Community Services. So it's like this, they're making multiple payments to all of these different NGOs, but these NGOs, they're all linked to the same account. So there's millions and millions of dollars. This DHS guy that was interviewed, he was one of the people that would cut the checks, right? And to provide services for all of these illegals coming through. And so they cut like all of these checks, but they're all going to the same account. But then, and so all of these different NGOs can basically go, oh, hey, yeah, we need more money. And they'll always get it. There is no accountability. There is no tracking of where this money goes to or what it's used for, because all of these NGOs are under no obligation to they get a $60 million check. They're under no obligation to show what they're actually spending the money on. And it's also being used for human trafficking and child trafficking. It's literally funding child trafficking. And I remember we talked a while ago about how Child Protective Services and those sorts of things are being used really as a front for child trafficking. And then this is one of the methods in which they're doing it, is there's all this government money, all these checks being cut to these NGOs with no accountability, and it's being found that, the quote-unquote, charitable organizations that this money is going to are actually funneling in child sex trafficking and funding the traffickers. And so I'm going to put the link to this video from Redacted into our chat room so that you guys can feel free to give it a watch later. Let's see, just looking in, we got a couple of Skype numbers that are just hanging back, and it looks like we have Bianchi kicking back listening. Feel free to press 1 at any time, and we can bring you on. And, hey, Cinnamon. Cinnamon just showed up in the chat room. Good to see you. We got Ideal Maker that has joined us as well. So hi, Ideal Maker. We have 34 minutes left of the live broadcast, so hopefully people will call in 563-999. Because, of course, there's still more stuff to try to get to, besides not being able to download that clip that I thought I had already downloaded, but apparently not. But, yeah, I will just go in and scroll some of the stuff that I have posted recently to talk about as well. This was an interesting story that I saw local here in Oregon. Oregon Supreme Court sides with a woman alleging Governor Kotek caused her wrongful imprisonment. So the Oregon Supreme Court has called for the immediate release of a woman who the justices ruled was unlawfully incarcerated due to an order from Governor Tina Kotek. On Wednesday, Supreme Court justices ruled Kotek didn't hold the authority to send Terry Lee Brown back to prison after her sentence was commuted during former Governor Kate Brown's tenure. Court documents show Terry Lee Brown pleaded guilty to 2 counts of mail theft in April of 2017. She was sentenced to 60 months in prison, followed by 2 years of post-prison supervision. In December of 2020, then Governor Brown issued commutations for several Oregon inmates in an effort to slow the spread of COVID-19 inside the prison system. Terry Lee Brown was discharged from Coffee Creek Correctional Facility that same month, but was still required to complete her post-prison supervision. In February of 2023, 3 years later, authorities informed Brown that she had completed her sentence. But roughly 1 year later, Brown was arrested and held in the same facility once again. The Supreme Court opinion said Brown didn't learn that Governor Kotek had reversed the commutation until after she was arrested. Brown filed a petition against Kotek and other public employees in May of 23, arguing she was illegally imprisoned. Her petition was accompanied by a supporting memorandum in which she argues that Governor Kotek's revocation of her earlier conditional commutation violates a variety of state and federal constitutional principles, including that the governor lacks the authority to revoke a commutation after the expiration of a sentence. In addition to ordering the state to free the plaintiff, the court also knocked down its argument that Brown previously waived her right to challenge authorities if her commutation was revoked. Justices said she may have waived that right when she first signed a contract with the state, but that no longer applied after she completed her sentence. So this is just another level of fuckery. I mean, you know, I can't believe that it took that long, but yeah, that's just crazy. So, you know, you do a considerable amount of time of your sentence, right? More than half of it. One governor commutes that sentence, and then you're just under supervision. And then a year later, oh, surprise, we're arresting you and tossing your ass back into prison again because the new governor revoked it. It was never even communicated to you. You didn't even know that the new governor revoked that, and now you're arrested and sent back to prison again. That to me is just, wow. Case, I definitely agree with the Supreme Court. Like, you don't do that. You know? Didn't commit any new offenses or anything. It you know, and this is surprising to me too, because like Governor Kotek and our previous Governor Brown, I mean, the two go hand in hand. I mean, there's usually not much of a difference between those two. So I'm actually surprised that Kotek revoked it to begin with. You know, why would she undo something that the previous governor she was aligned with did? It didn't really make any sense to me. Any thoughts on that?
I don't know about that one.
Yeah, that's a bunch of fuckery. Then another interesting one. This is from May 8th from Wired. Top FBI official urges agents to use warrantless wiretaps on U.S. soil. An internal email from the FBI Director Paul Abate, obtained by Wired, tells employees to search for U.S. persons in a controversial spy programs database that investigators have repeatedly misused. The top FBI official encouraging employees to continue to investigate Americans using a wireless foreign surveillance program in an effort to justify the Bureau's spy powers, according to an internal email obtained by Wired. Known as Section 702, the program is controversial for having been misused by the FBI to target U.S. protesters, journalists, and even a sitting member of Congress. U.S. lawmakers, nevertheless, voted to extend the program in April for an additional 2 years while codifying a slew of procedures that the FBI claims is working to stop the abuse. Obtained by Wired on April 20th email authored by FBI Director Paul Abate to employees states, quote-unquote, to continue to demonstrate why tools like this are essential to our mission, we need to use them, while also holding ourselves accountable for doing so properly and in compliance with legal requirements. Yeah, right. Added Abate, quote, I urge everyone to continue to look for ways to appropriately use U.S. person queries to advance the mission, with the added confidence that this new pre-approval requirement will help ensure that these queries are fully compliant with the law. The Deputy Director's email seems to show that the FBI is actively pushing for more surveillance of Americans, not out of necessity, but by default, says U.S. Representative Joe Lofgren, a Democrat from California. This directly contradicts earlier assertions from the FBI during the debate over Section 702's reauthorization. Following the publication, FBI spokesperson Susan McKee provided a statement from the Bureau that mischaracterized Wired's reporting, inaccurately claiming it alleges that the FBI instructed its employees to violate the law or FBI policies. The statement added that Abate's email emphasized Congress's recognition of the vital importance of FISA Section 702 to protect the American people. Protect us, right. And was sent to ensure that FBI personnel were immediately aware of and in compliance with the privacy-enhancing changes the law has put in place. The article goes on a little bit, but you get the gist. Now, this is happening. So we have this against Americans. You know, basically, we're going to use these queries. Go ahead and use them. Spy on Americans, not because we need to, not, you know, but just to show, you know, it's all for show. Like, we have to justify ourselves here. So whether or not there's even a reason to spy on somebody, spy on them anyway, right? And then I'm scrolling down, but now the situation is completely reversed when it comes to the illegal migrants coming across the border. Department of Homeland Security says, but the privacy of migrants on the terrorist watch list is greater than the public's right to know. So here's that duopoly. So apparently, I'll read a little bit of the article. Quote unquote, I did not ask for any names, IDs, addresses, anything that would breach privacy, nor did I ask for any law enforcement sensitive information, Fox News reporter Bill Mulgren wrote in a post on X. I simply requested only the nationalities of people arrested on the list so people could have an understanding of where in the world they are coming from. The Department of Homeland Security declined to share the nationalities of people on the terror watch list who entered the United States illegally with a reporter on Wednesday, claiming their right to privacy outweighs the public's right to know. The Fox News reporter Bill Mulligan filed a Freedom of Information Act request that only sought the nationalities of the individuals, not including any identifying information such as their names or locations. The denial of the request occurred on the same day that at least one illegal immigrant reportedly on the terror watch list was apprehended while attempting to infiltrate the Quantico Marine Corps base in Virginia. The privacy interests of the individuals in the records you have requested outweigh any minimal public interest in disclosure of that information, the department told Mulligan in a letter. Any private interest you may have in that information does not factor into the aforementioned balancing test. So there's something really wrong with this picture. You know what I mean? They're on the terror watch list, okay? They're here illegally. And we have to protect their privacy? What? What? But us Americans, us citizens, we can be spied on by the FBI unknowingly without a warrant?
I don't think so.
Where's our privacy? But the privacy of illegal immigrants that are on the terror watch list, their privacy matters. We got to look out for them. Doesn't that piss you off? Sure does me.
It definitely pisses me off.
This is so backwards. Our government
especially
is
being down here at the border.
Yeah, I mean, I just, our government is so upside down right now, you know. Americans' rights aren't important, but the privacy rights of illegal immigrants coming in that are on the terror watch list, they're protected. More and more. Anybody but American citizens are protected. American citizens, you're on your own, man. We could spy on you all you want.
Well, they got to find out which Americans are the ones most likely to take up arms and go after these illegal alien terrorists, as opposed to those who won't go after them, and accept that the fact that they're going to get blowed up.
And then we're not even protected in our own home. You know, we talked about the other night that airman that was shot in his home because he was armed. And those kinds of things happen at the same all the time. Way too frequently. the corrupt, it's just so corrupt. You can't even be safe in your own home anymore. The police can be called for a wellness check, and knock on your door. And oh my gosh, you have a firearm, then they'll shoot and kill you right on the spot. There's no, you're not, even in your own home, even in states that, have castle doctrines and stand your ground laws. Doesn't matter. Nope. These abuses just keep going and going and going. There was a related thing too. Let's see. Like I said, I had all kinds of stuff lined up to talk about tonight. Let me go back to the thing. Yeah, that pisses me off. We talked the other night that Paul Pelosi's attacker, David DePape, got 30 years in prison. He got more years in prison than pedos that kidnap, rape, torture, and dispose of little kids. But okay. Putin signed a military cooperation statement with President Xi from China during a meeting in Beijing. So they are reaffirming their alliance together. This article that I found too is kind of interesting. Biden White House keeps telling whoppers, and even the legacy media has started to notice. Yeah. President Joe Biden has a long history of telling bizarre, incomprehensible narratives while attempting to relate to his audience. He has also repeatedly reiterated long debunked stories such as the nature of his son's death, his alleged arrest as a civil rights marcher, and even his claim to have been a truck driver. But he and the White House have further taken to regularly misrepresenting statistics when discussing the performance of the U.S. economy, an issue on which he faces considerable scrutiny from the public and scores poorly in many polls. Between inflation, spending, and other key metrics, the White House has started to take flack while attempting to represent its economic performance more favorably. But Biden's dubious statements has prompted even generally sympathetic outlets to push back, and some claims have gone well beyond economic data. Inflation was not at 9% when Biden took office. Last week, Biden told CNN that no president had the run we've had in terms of creating jobs and bringing down inflation. It was 9% when I came into office. 9%. He later said the same thing to Yahoo Finance. Exactly. He later said the same thing to Yahoo Finance on Tuesday, indicating that inflation has gone slightly up. It was at 9% when I came in, and it's now down to 3%. In reality, inflation stood at 1.4% in January of 2021 and reached a high of 9.1% in June of 2022 during Biden's term. Biden's comment drew rebuke for fact checks from several news outlets. Even far left Snopes rated the claim false, while normally Biden-friendly CNN observed that Biden's claim is not even close to true. The Washington Post fact-checker, meanwhile, gave Biden 4 Pinocchios for the claim, which the Post defines as a whopper. Deficit reduction, responsible for the largest reduction of the federal deficit of any president in U.S. history. Quote, I cut the deficit by $1.7 trillion in 2 years. That's more than any other president on record, he posted on X at the time. The Post was quickly subjected to a community note, observing that the $1 trillion spending reduction claimed by Biden was the result of pandemic emergency spending that automatically expired versus action taken by the president. Included with the community note were links to fact checks from the Washington Post, PolitiFact, and FactCheck.org. The Washington Post fact checker assigned Biden's claim a bottomless Pinocchio rating. gas at $2.35, not $5 when he entered office. That he had reduced gas prices from a price of more than $5 across the nation from when he took office. Quote, the most common price in gas in America is $3.39, down from over $5 when I took office, he said at the time. We need to keep making that progress by having energy companies bring down the cost of a gallon of gas that reflects the cost of paying for a barrel of oil. The average gas price in January of 2021 stood at $2.33 per gallon. CNN at the time said the claim isn't even close to true. Fox Business, moreover, highlighted that AAA data indicated the average price of a gallon of regular gas at the time Biden made the comment was $3.76, significantly higher than Biden claimed. Biden suggests that his uncle was eaten by cannibals. You got to love that one, right? That one was like, what? Biden claimed to visit Ground Zero the day after 9/11. Last year, Biden claimed that he had visited the site of the World Trade Center one day after the September 11th terror in New York. I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell, he said at an event in Alaska commemorating the attacks. It looked so devastating from where you could stand. Biden contradicted himself, claiming that he was in Washington, D.C. on September 12, 2001, and his 2007 book Promises to Keep, which stated that he spent the day in D.C. He did visit Ground Zero in September 2001, however, though a CNN fact check noted that he actually went to Ground Zero 9 days after the attack, not the very next day. And then, of course, the Her report finds Biden did retain classified documents. His claim that Bo died in Iraq. Biden has repeatedly misstated the nature of his son Bo's death throughout his term, though some have attributed his telling of the narrative to advanced age and confusion rather than a deliberate attempt to misstate. In May of 2023, he told the Marines that my son was a major in the U.S. Army. We lost him in Iraq. Bo Biden died of brain cancer in 2015 at Walter Reed National Medical Center in Maryland. He was 46 at the time. In October of 2022, he spoke at Camp Hale saying, just imagine, and I mean this seriously, I say this as a father of a man who won the Bronze Star, the service medal, and lost his life in Iraq. In November of that year, Biden referred to the war in Iraq when discussing the Ukraine conflict and explained the gaffe by saying, I'm thinking about Iraq because that's where my son died. Biden's defenders claim that Bo may have contracted a deadly cancer from being exposed to toxic waste in Iraq, but that has never been established. So this article, it's just kind of funny how, and people that support Biden, you're going to vote for this guy. You're seriously going to vote for this guy for another 4 years. The guy flat out lies about how his son dies. He lies about his cannibalism. What? I mean, he lies about came into office and afterwards he lies about inflation, of course, to his own benefit. It goes on and on and on and on and on. I thought Trump was the big liar. Wasn't that what all the Democrats were saying? How badly Trump lies all the time, and we need somebody that's honest, and that's why they voted for Biden. It's like, what? And you're going to vote for this joker again? Can't even keep straight the causes of death of his own family? I mean, what? By the way, we have 11 minutes left of the live broadcast to call in. So if you're out there and you're listening and you haven't called in yet, do so. 563-999-3485. As we go into the bonus hour, your audio will cut out if you're just listening online. So you need to call in the next 10.5 minutes in order to continue on with us. And then, of course, press number 1 when you actually want to talk. And it looks like Pianki just took that cue and raised his hand. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Pianki on in. Pianki.
Hello, Lori. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Good to see you. Glad you're raising your hand and that you're joining us. What do you think so far? What are your thoughts?
You know, I was just thinking about some of these laws. 50 years ago, you never would even dream of creating a law to protect yourself from some of the things that we're hearing today. It's just mind bound. You got to have a law to protect yourself from just about anything. And because if you don't, they're going to come in and impose their will left, use the justice system for what it is. Merrick Garland is a wimp, and we're in bad shape. We got to do something.
Yep.
And the
I mean,
thing
that's
about
the state that we're in. They're creating more laws to protect their own corruption than they are to actually protect the American people. As a matter of fact, you know, they want to villainize the American people more and more and more to justify all of these laws.
Yeah.
Especially gun control laws. Did you all see this story? This is from May 10th. Theft suspect stole 2 police vehicles while handcuffed, survived 11 officers' gunfire. This was in Portland, Maine, not Portland, Oregon, but Portland, Maine. A man who crashed a stolen police vehicle survived gunfire from 11 police officers and then drove off and crashed another police cruiser, all while wearing handcuffs in a hospital gown. Is in no mental capacity to appear before a judge right now, his lawyer said on Friday. Again, this is from May 10th. The chaotic chain of events involved at least 5 law enforcement agencies. Began when Gary Porter, already wanted on a felony theft warrant, was discovered passed out in a chicken coop, arrested, and then taken to the hospital for evaluation. Paris Police Chief Mike Daly then took him to jail and had stepped out of the pickup truck to escort him inside when Porter somehow slipped his handcuffs from behind his back, moved into the driver's seat, and drove off. The chief jumped onto the truck's running board to try to stop him, but was thrown to the ground. A chase ensued, joined by officers from Norway, Oxford, and Paris, sheriff's deputies, and state police in a mostly rural part of Maine, about 48 miles from Portland, police said. They eventually deployed spike mats that blew the tires and caused crash into a ditch. A bystander's video captured at least part of the gunfire at that point. With his hands still in cuffs, Porter circles around the truck and jumps into another police vehicle in full view of the officers. Shots ring out as he climbs into the second cruiser with his back to the police and takes off again. The video shows him swerving and driving away. Authorities said he crashed again a short distance from there. By the end, 11 officers ultimately fired their weapons, and Porter was struck once by an officer's bullet. Police didn't say that any officers were hit. Maine State Police spokesperson Shannon Moss said initially, without providing more detail, that officers confronted Porter and gunfire was exchanged. That was in a statement on behalf of all of the law enforcement department involved. But the departments involved didn't release key details of the confrontation, including whether Porter obtained a weapon or fired it. They also didn't release information about the extent of his injuries. The Office of Maine Attorney General said Friday that Porter was shot, treated, and released from the hospital. Porter's initial court appearance and 2 counts of theft, assault on a police officer, escaping custody, eluding police, and violation of bail was set on Wednesday by video conference from the Cumberland County Jail. Cation he was being given made him mumble and unable to keep his eyes open. He had another opportunity on Friday, but his attorney said he still isn't fit to go before a judge. I don't think he's mentally equipped right now to go forward. His attorney said a mental examination was requested and Porter was scheduled to return to court May 15th. The bystander who recorded the video of the roadside confrontation in Paris said that she arrived on the scene to see a truck in the ditch and numerous police vehicles alongside it. She said she heard gunfire and saw officers shooting into the truck. She thought the person in the truck might have been killed. The officers appeared to relax. But the video shows what happened next. Porter is still cuffed and in a white hospital gown, ignoring shouts to put your hands up, and climbed into the SUV that had been left with its driver's side door open. More bullets flew as he drove away. 11 officers are on administrative leave following the shooting, blah, blah, blah. The mental, wow. I just you can envision this whole scenario happening. Damn.
The problem with that is them officers need to be fired for shooting at him. One, you said he running away with his back to him. That didn't pose no danger. And they shooting at him, and he had asked him to put his hands up. He got his hands handcuffed. There's a lot of people in shooting at a fleeing vehicle. That's dangerous to other people.
Apparently it was pretty rural. But, I wonder if it would have even made any difference if these officers have done the same thing, if they were, in a residential neighborhood versus in a rural area. I would hope so, Maybe they figured that, now there's nobody around, it's rural, and so it's safe to just shoot at them. But still, I got your point, yeah. Especially if it's unclear if he was actually armed or not. But, he's handcuffed, How is he going to shoot at officers and drive a vehicle at the same time while handcuffed?
Yeah, the bullet could have flew off and hit old Elsie out there in the field. Elsie the cow.
I'm bringing Mike on in. I see Mike is joining us here. Hey, Mike.
Hi,
Not
guys.
to cut you off, Bianchi.
Yeah,
What do you think, Mike?
This guy, obviously he was subdued. Obviously, if he's handcuffed with his hand behind his back. Now, I've seen pictures of people, they're handcuffed, they're doing the perp walk thing, and they've got a towel or a jacket over their hand, and they've got them in front of them. Now, if he had his hands in front of him, and he turns around and the guy shoots him he's still subdued. He's still got his hands cuffed, and the cop should have not shot him in the back. I don't care if it's rural or city. I don't care. Once you subdue a guy, once the guy is down and got his hands cuffed, he can't defend himself. He can't reach. Well, that's the point. He can't reach out and get his gun, but he can't reach out. It's not like, what was it, a few months ago, where a guy, we saw pictures of a guy actually reach out and try and grab a guy's gun, a cop's gun, and then he ended up getting the cop's taser and shooting the cop and trying to run after that. But that's different. He had his hands free. He wasn't subdued. All right. So you don't want to see him shoot him in the back, but the guy ran. He was subdued, but the guy ran. It seems like, right?
And then it's not like he was using the vehicle as a weapon either. He was driving away. He got into the vehicle. He wasn't trying to, run down these police officers to kill them. He was driving away. and 11 officers are shooting at him. Like, what's that?
All those officers need to be fired and prosecuted for what they done. When you got them detained and handcuffed, they're your responsibility. Their safety is your responsibility. What it is, they're embarrassed and they pissed for what happened. Now they really in some trouble. Some lawsuits should be floating around. Somebody running from you and you looking at their back. How the hell are they supposed to be a danger? I know what you're saying. I didn't make the law. I didn't make the arguments in cases that I've heard. That's what should be applied here. That's the problem. You don't apply the law equally all over in every case, even though it may be different, but the tentativeness of it should be the same.
Right, and by the way, who else do we have on with us? I just got here. Who else do we have on with us, Lorianne?
Well, we obviously have Bianchi. Robert should still be on with us as well. Boyd is on with us.
Okay. Is Sarge here?
Sarge is in the chat room, but I have a couple of Skype callers that are kicking back listening, haven't pressed one yet. I just stepped away from my laptop. But, yeah, we're going to be going into the bonus hour here, so if they haven't called in, they're not going to be able to.
And Bianchi, it's not like that thing that happened, what was it, a month or so ago, where the guy when the guy rolled up a obviously over-tinted window, had a gun that he shouldn't have had, wasn't subdued, and the cops emptied their clip, however many cops that were there, emptied their clip into the car, and emptied every one of their bullets and their clips into the car. This isn't that, all right? This guy was subdued. I go back to it again. He was subdued, you know?
Well, let me ask this question. Okay, you say the guy was subdued. Explain to me, if the guy is subdued, how in the hell did he steal a cop car and then steal a second cop car?
Because he wasn't subdued properly. That's why when a police officer locks you up, puts handcuffs on, at that point in time, your safety is in their hands.
Well, let me refer back to the story that Lorianne read. He was subdued. He was transported to the hospital, and somehow in between the time that they put him in the vehicle, the police vehicle, and the time he got out of the police vehicle, his hands, even though they were cuffed, were now in front of him instead of behind him.
Yeah, he did like a Houdini or something. And then we do have a Skype number raising their hand. I'm wondering if it's Sarge or who else it is that we might have. Hey, who do we got?
Yeah, Laurie, I got to weigh in on this because this is a scenario that I've gone over many times in my use of force instruction to my students. And, you know, we would have a back and forth on this in the class, situations like this. All right, first of all, I don't know what the law is on deadly force in the state of Maine, so I can't comment on it, and I'm not going to. What I am going to comment on is what the Supreme Court said about deadly force as a method to seize a suspect in the meaning of the Fourth Amendment. That's the way they framed it. They said when a police officer uses deadly force to seize a suspect who is not posing an imminent deadly threat to the officer or the life of someone else, then that use of deadly force is considered a seizure under the Fourth Amendment. And the question Supreme Court said is it seen as reasonable? Is it a reasonable search and or seizure? So that will be the question. Are the actions of the officers reasonable? Now, again, I am not speaking to the department's regulations. I am not speaking to what the state of Maine imposes on police officers. I don't know. I'm just saying what the Supreme Court said is the minimum with regard to police officers using deadly force against a suspect. Now, here's what could happen as a constitutional justification. And remember, any acts by a police officer, especially acts involving the use of deadly force, must be done with prudential considerations in mind. You got to be prudential because you don't want to kill civilians or damage property or anything else inadvertently. You don't want to do that, so prudence is always a consideration. But now I'm just looking at the meaning of constitutionality. That's all I'm looking at right now. So with that in mind, what might have justified a use of deadly force, because the Supreme Court said if the subject has committed an act involving the use of deadly force and he is escaping and no other means are available to prevent his escape. So you got to have all those factors in there. One, he has committed a crime involving the use of deadly force, and that was within a reasonable time frame. Two, like in a chase. Like when they're chasing him and say he almost ran down one of the officers and they chased him. That's one criteria. Two, there's no other means to stop him. And three, that is the person against whom the force is directed. So if during the chase he committed an act that could be construed as involving a use of deadly force or potentially a use of deadly force against someone, then that would constitutionally, according to the Supreme Court, I'm not talking about any other consideration now. I know there are others, but about constitutionally, that would satisfy the Supreme Court's use of deadly force to prevent the escape of a subject who has committed a crime involving the use of deadly force or imminent physical bodily harm against another. So if during that chase he almost hit another car or he almost hit one of the officers who's throwing a strip stop across the road, the stop sticks across the road or anything like that, then at the point he tried to get away again, even if he was handcuffed with his hands in front of him, he's got control of the cruiser, he's trying to get away, that would constitutionally, according to Supreme Court, Tennessee v. Garner, 1989, justify use of deadly force against him.
Well, you know, I remember two cases. One, you had a guy that was being pursued by the police on a motorcycle on the other side of the median going the other way. And the police on the one side shot across the median and hit him and killed him. He got in trouble for that. And you had another case where police was on an overpass shooting at a car that had a suspect in it that was heading to go under the overpass they were standing on. And I think they got into some serious trouble for firing up to the car. If that's the case, then any time, especially in California, many as they have, the police should light up while they're in the helicopter after the driver that's driving and that they're pursuing. So I'm saying that
simply running fast is not going to satisfy that. Just running fast and eluding the police officer by high speed won't be enough. There's going to have to be a showing wherein that person was posing an imminent deadly threat at some point in the pursuit to someone, a specific person or person. It can't just be the fact that he could be a danger because he's going fast. And I understand the police officer could have gotten in trouble. They might have violated department regulations, in which case it could have been disciplined or fired. They might have disregarded state law. They could have been prosecuted under state law involving use of deadly force, or any number of other factors. I'm just saying what the Supreme Court has said is a minimum standard for police officers across the nation, and that is the standard they have set. They have said that if the crime involved the use of deadly physical force and lesser means were not able to stop his imminent escape, then deadly force is considered a legal Fourth Amendment seizure to prevent his escape.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we're looking
I just put the article in the chat room.
He had already used deadly force with the vehicle against the sheriff at the very beginning of the pursuit.
That would satisfy the requirement then. That would be enough to satisfy.
Well,
I'm not saying remember, I am not saying they should shoot him. I don't think you should take a human life unless it's an absolute last resort. I mean, I definitely, that's why I avoided killing anybody, even when I had the opportunity to kill people. I passed up the opportunity to kill people at least 5 times. I could have legally shot him and didn't. So, I mean, I'm with the guys that are concerned
jumped onto the truck's
taking a
running
life.
board to try to stop him, but was thrown to the ground. So,
see, that would be enough to satisfy Trump. That's enough right there. That's enough right there to satisfy the constitutional requirement.
No, it's not, because those are in the past. So when he run into another county, and one of those levels is in that another county, how do they know all this that happened?
They got radios, and they're notifying them they're in hot pursuit. When you're in hot pursuit, you can go across state lines in hot pursuit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but almost is not doing so. Almost can be anything. He could have raised his hand and scratched his eyebrow. So the man did not pose no threat to him. Running from it, like Lori Lightfoot said, you're not supposed to. Police in Chicago are not supposed to engage in no foot chase after a convict or a suspect. I guess that means the police dog's not supposed to chase them either. No,
we got to remember we got a federalist system here, and there are a multiplicity of state rules, regulations, laws, department regs, and they're all different. That's why you got to look at each one of them. But again, hot pursuit is something that's a well-established principle in constitutional law. Even across, I've chased people across state lines. The only thing was in the pursuit, we notified the state of Indiana, and I'm coming across the state line, and we requested their troopers to come in and take over the pursuit. And they did. And they would take the lead on the pursuit, and I just follow along behind them, because right now I'm in their jurisdiction. Nonetheless, I didn't have to stop the pursuit at the state line like you used to have to do back in the 30s when all them bandit gangs like the Pharaohs and Pretty Boy Floyd were operating. The cops literally had to stop at the state line. The Supreme Court said that hot pursuit, you can continue as far as is reasonable.
In St. Louis, they had a case where a man was in the car with his kids. I know two cases. And his kids in the car. And the police a shot at the car with the kids in it. Another case, you had the police chief of Pine Line. I know him. His name was Ricky Collins. You had a sobriety check down the street from him. The car was coming up toward him, and it made a U-turn, and this idiot fired at the car.
Well, see, now you're talking about matters of prudence. And, I mean, a cop who isn't prudent doesn't deserve to be a police officer either. You got to be prudential in your decisions about things like that, because there are other considerations than just catching a suspect. So if a cop can't be prudent, he probably ought to be fired on that basis. So I'm just saying what is allowed under the Constitution and the law. Because, you know, one of the things they tried to do in training, and I definitely tried to do it, was teach officers you've got to know your backdrop. You've got to know your background when you're putting a round out there. That's every time you pull a trigger.
In one case, you had county police chasing a car with two black suspects. They're on Delmar going east of McLaren. A family in a van going shopping. It hits the van and kills 5 members in the family. The suspect jumps out and runs. So they should have pulled back on pursuing that car at high speed going in that area. So no, those police
are wrong. And that's why many departments have in fact adopted such policies. The supervisors on the shift or the watch can call pursuit whenever they think it's too hazardous to the public. And most police departments these days have adopted policies like that.
A suspect along Highway 70 there behind the grandpas there on St. Charles Rock Road got out of his car and ran and climbed over a fence. And I don't think the police shot him in the back as he was climbing over the fence. If you're chasing a suspect like we see in these chase in California, they got helicopters. Just follow the car.
That's what they do most of the time. I mean, these California police departments nowadays have got these pursuits so down to such a science, they tend to minimize the risk to the public. I mean, I've been watching the progress of pursuits in California now, and now these days they got the cars, they got the overhead satellites. They got everything now, and they can safely call a pursuit or tell the police officer to pull back on a whole lot of pursuits that in the past they would just recklessly keep going no matter what until either the guy TC'd out or, the officers did. So they're a lot better now than they used to.
If the cop was hanging on to the car and the suspect was driving and the cop could have took his gun out and shot him while hanging on, that would have been good. But once you break loose of that car and it's going on down the road, what are you going to do, shoot at the car? No, it's dumb.
Actually, again, according to the Supreme Court, if the state decides to allow police officers to do that, yes, you can.
Well, the Supreme Court.
Yes, you can. But again, you got to look at what the states will allow. You got to look at what the states will allow the police to do. Because states don't have to go by what the Supreme Court says. Some states don't. They put big restrictions on what their police officers can do. Yeah, they don't have. The state just said that if it happens, if it does, it's a constitutional seizure. If your state decides on, they're not requiring police departments to follow that particular ruling. So, remember, a state can always put more restrictions. Remember, a state can always put more restrictions on government. If they want to put more restrictions on their government, they're free to do so.
Well, they should, because I know my daughter's neighbors, Mr. Seigel and his wife was out driving in the country, and the police were pursuing a vehicle, and the vehicle that the police were pursuing crossed over the yellow line and hit them dead on and killed both of them. It's just time after time after time, again and again. Those things don't have to happen like that. You was embarrassed.
Well, I think, but the trend today is to pull back on the police when it comes to these pursuits now. They're not letting cops pursue like they used to when I first came on the job. They pretty much let you, if you decide you want to pursue, then nobody call you off. But now this is not the case anymore.
And the lawsuits is going to be against the police, the community, and maybe some civil lawsuits if they found to have violated this individual's civil rights. Immunity is gone. But in this case, it just smells of it. You got some people that was pissed off because they was embarrassed, and they're going to try to use that type of force on this individual. It was unnecessary.
Well, those lawsuits are exactly the reason why they're pulling the cops' horns in on this stuff. But like you pointed out many times, one state that pretty much gives their officers free reign, at least their state cops, Arkansas don't call off no damn pursuits. I ain't never seen nothing like the state of Arkansas.
You're right.
No, that wouldn't even have that in Illinois.
In St. Louis County, St. Anne police will chase you from here to South Korea if they have to.
Man, they ain't calling off no pursuits. I've seen some of the wildest pursuits in Arkansas that I said would have been long called off under the new regime in like Illinois and other places.
Yeah, Arkansas Highway Patrol will do a pit stop on a motorcycle.
Sure enough, sure will. I've seen it.
Yeah.
They don't play. They don't play.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. That this guy that we're talking about tried to steal a sheriff's vehicle. All right? Tried to steal one and tried to steal I guess maybe was successful in stealing a second one. Now, granted, he might have been handcuffed, but he got the job done, and that car is a weapon. Can be considered a weapon. If that guy supposedly with handcuffs on and he's trying to drive with the handcuffs on, now how he got to the point where he was semi-subdued and maybe his hands were in front of him to where he could possibly steal the car, is something else, but apparently it happened that way. Apparently he did get his hands to where he could steal a car and try and steal a car. So that car, once that happens, that car becomes a weapon.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. When I first came on the job, they had what they call a forcible felony. and a deadly force was authorized for a suspect that had committed a forcible felony. Forcible felonies under Illinois statutes were treason, murder, voluntary manslaughter, rape, robbery, burglary, kidnapping, or aggravated assault or battery. Now, if you had one of them for one of them offenses, and the guy was escaping, and you would believe, or he had committed one of those offenses, then you could use deadly force. Now, a famous incident in Illinois that really got a lot of condemnation. I mean, it got a hell of a lot of condemnation, but the state attorney didn't do anything to the cop because he was citing Illinois statutes. The Chicago Police Department disciplined the guy, but they couldn't do anything to him criminally. He had a teenager, and it was a white teenager, by the way, who was handcuffed behind his back, and he committed burglary, and the cop had arrested him for burglary. This guy was a high school track star, and he took off running, and the cops couldn't catch him. With his hands behind his back, they still couldn't catch him. He was a high school sprinter. So the cop shot him in the back as he was running away. And that was before Tennessee versus Garner, so I want you to get that straight. This was like in 1982, and this is before Tennessee versus Garner was 1989. Anyway, the cop shot him in the back. The parents tried to do a wrongful suit. They tried to get criminal charges pressed against the officer for voluntary manslaughter and all that stuff. But the state's attorney looked at the statute, said, nope, can't do nothing to him. Statute authorized deadly force to prevent the escape of someone who's committed a burglary. Or that, the police officer is arresting for having committed a burglary. So they couldn't do anything to him. And that's the way the state of affairs was before the Tennessee versus Garner decision. Look it up for yourself.
Well, Mike, you said that the car was a deadly weapon, but the police officer that was driving the car left the keys in it. And it should have turned the engine off. A weapon is not going to be dangerous unless you leave it in a state of being where it can be used immediately by somebody who has ill intentions. They shouldn't have left the engine running, jumped out the car.
There's always room to criticize the officers for either bad tactics or incompetence. I mean, we can always do that, and we should, when we see that they have done things as dumb as leaving the keys in the car, leaving the engine running, suspect able to. But that's neither here nor there as to what the law allows them to do in the event that they screwed up. That's why people sue the cops for screwing up, and they got civil lawsuits for things like that. That's one of the reasons we constantly try to get training for our officers to keep from making stupid screw-ups like that. But again, you got to separate incompetence that's not willful from what the law allows them to do in the event that these events get out of control, because they're two separate things, even though one contributes to the other.
Like in the case of George Floyd. When the chief was up there on the stand, hang on. He was asked the procedure that Chavez did, although he really didn't do it, was it per department policy? He said no. But Chavez's mother came up with a instruction manual from the police department that had that very procedure in it.
That's right. And he had applied it identically to the depiction in the manual. His application of the hold on Floyd was identical. It wasn't dissimilar. He had his knee in exactly the same spot in the shoulder blade, as confirmed by the other police officer's body cam. And this police chief, Arredondo, got up there and perjured himself on the stand about it. That was damn, I couldn't believe it. I said, Chief, how in the hell are you going to get up here on the stand and lie like that? You know damn well your department specified that procedure in which Chauvin was certified in. Now, you can argue he shouldn't have done it anyway, but for the department to run away from their own training was absolutely despicable, no matter what Chauvin did wrong.
So with me, I don't care if you're a criminal or you're a Catholic priest. You are afforded the 14th Amendment procedure due process of the law. And the trial's supposed to be held in a court of law. not on the scene by police officers or anybody else.
Well,
we
know what
the
the
application of standards.
No, we know what the deal was in the Floyd case. I mean, you read that book, Minneapolis is Burning, you watch that documentary, the fix was in. They had to appease the mob. That verdict against Chauvin and those other police officers was done strictly to appease the mob. It wasn't about justice.
And, hey, Bianchi, I can tell you from personal experience why the police most likely left the car and left it running with the keys in it is because when you stop your police vehicle and have all of your lights and everything on and running, it kills the battery. I had that happen to me during my arrest for DUI. I mean, it was quite a to me it's a funny story, but I was sitting in the police cruiser while the cop had gotten out, shut off the vehicle to make the arrest on my partner, who I was racing down the snow-covered street. And when the cop got back in the car, and by the way, I was not handcuffed while I was in the police cruiser that he vacated to arrest the other guy. Not only was I not handcuffed, but I was actually sitting in the front seat. And the riot gun was probably 6 inches from my hand. That's how this.
Well, the newer squad cars have a lockout. That when you do that, you pull the key out the ignition, you engage it. When you engage the lockout, the only way it locks the transmission so it can't be shifted in the drive and the steering wheel. The only way you can get it back out is to have the key put back in ignition and turned on.
Well, I'm just describing my arrest on a DUI. They had handcuffed my partner, and I'm sitting there watching all of this going, what the fuck did you do, Spud? That you got all handcuffed up and searched and everything? And then he was brought back to the patrol car that I was in. He was placed in the back seat of the patrol car. The cop got in the patrol car, and because he'd left all of his lights and stuff running and had the engine turned off, the battery was dead. So the car wouldn't start. So
About how long ago was that, by the way? About how long ago did that occur?
Oh, this was back in the 70s.
Oh, well, that's
So, in the meantime, the cop then asked the state troopers who had actually pulled over my buddy if the trooper would do the transport for him while, they were trying to get his car started. And in fact, my friend Spud, his truck was sitting there. They weren't but a couple of feet apart from the, nose to nose on the road. And he says, yeah, I got some jumpers in the back of my truck. Just grab them and let's jump this thing and go. We were pretty cooperative drunks. Anyway.
Yeah, but I'm just telling you, you see these newer squad cars, you see the electrical systems on these newer squads, they got like 1,200 amp charging systems, and they got and the cold cranking amps on the batteries is well over 1,000 amps. They got much bigger battery capacity because of all the electronic equipment that they're running. In fact, those alternators are such that they actually, and they pull so much drag on the engine because of the charging they can do, they actually cut a bit of the, that's one reason they make the engines with a little bit more power, because the alternators pull so much parasitic horsepower off the engine.
Well, anyway, so get this now, all right? Here I am, I'm sitting in the front seat of the car. The trooper comes over, opens the back seat, or back door, grabs my buddy, puts him in his cruiser, okay, and then walks around to get into his cruiser to take Spud on into jail. And I opened the door, and I look at the trooper, and I said, hey, wait a minute. I think I'm supposed to go with you, too. You know? And the trooper looks at me with this funny look on his face like, what? What are you talking about? You know? And then he comes over. Then the trooper did his thing and then put the cuffs on me. And I said, you don't need the cuffs. I'm coming with you anyway, you know?
Well, look, I don't suppose I ever told you guys about the time I got a 3-day suspension for not following the handcuff regulations, did I? I got a 3-day suspension for it. I had stopped a woman who was the wife of a prominent neurosurgeon at, was it West St. Louis? Was the University of Illinois Hospital? I forget which. Anyway, I pulled her over, and she didn't have a driver's license or anything with her. She was driving around a stop sign, and she was doing like 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. And, you know, I said, well, you have a license, registration, and identification, all. She didn't have anything on. She didn't have a purse. So I said, well, look, ma'am, I think I can give you an I bond for this. When I have to establish your identity, you have to come back. We didn't have computers in the car then. And I said, I got to take you back down to the station and establish your identity before I can give you an I bond, a recognizance bond for when you show up in court. You've got no license to give me. You got nothing you can give me as a collateral for your court appearance. So, you know, and she said, she was all upset. I could see she was really upset about it. She was really embarrassed. And I said, okay, ma'am, I'm not going to handcuff you. Just go and put in the back seat. They got one of these new squad cars that they hadn't completely prepped yet. The doors that you couldn't unlock from the inside. And for some reason, they had given it to them before they prepped the damn thing. And I've got her inside the squad car, and I'm rolling along about 30 miles an hour, and she jumped out the damn car. She opened the door, jumped out, while the car was rolling. Fortunately, she did not seriously injure herself because she landed on grassy fields. But, man, I could have gotten a world of trouble for not finding relation to handcuff any individual in custody, no matter how minor the offense. And they let me off the hook with a 3-day suspension. And I never did it again after that. Wow. But I'm just saying that there's a reason why they got these regulations most of the time. Most of the time, if cops follow them, they'll stay out of trouble.
But my arrest was, my one and only arrest was, you know, it could have been a comedy movie to begin with.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I had wanted to be a real asshole and stuff, I could have called a cop to go pound sand because he came up and knocked on my door at my house after I had gotten home and got out of my car and was actually inside my house, and I was drunk, and he come knocked on my door and he says, I want to put you under arrest for drunk driving and speeding. And I said, oh yeah, sure, okay, let's go. And I walked out the door with him.
Well, some of these police officers don't need to be in the position they're in. I knew a case out in the rural white suburbs where a white young man was driving his father's pickup truck. And the police pulled him over, came up to the door, told him to let the window down, and then he gets pissed off and takes the kid out and slams him to the pavement. White officer, white kid. Only thing is, the kid's father was a police officer. And oh boy, did the shit hit the fan. So you got some that don't deserve to be in that position. Simple as that, because they not only will get the individual that's the suspect in trouble, but they get the municipality in trouble. That's why I tell them when a police officer violates the civil rights of any U.S. citizen and been found guilty of doing so, their name should go into a national registry. Because when they go someplace else, it's like Darren Wilson is down in Texas someplace, then that municipality has a right to know who they are taking responsibility of liability if he go out and do something wrong to somebody. They're going to have to pay for it.
You know, I'll tell you, That's why you taxpayers got to stay on your police departments and just that your politicians keep a tight rein on them. Because remember, they're given a lot of authority, and you don't want them to abuse it because they got too much authority to be allowed to use.
That's what we argue on in That's what we argue about in conversation. Is that the U.S. Constitution is not being followed, and we can't take the position because the person that stands due for punishment is somebody we don't like or somebody we do like. It has to be applied equally. We see that's not going on with Donald Trump right now. What he's facing is pure racism. We got to call it what it is. Just because his skin is white, that don't mean it ain't racism, what he's experiencing. As me and Sarge experienced it, Bianchi and Sarge, that was racist what they done to Bianchi and Sarge. Well, it's racist what they doing to Donald Trump.
Yeah, what they're doing to Donald Trump is step up from racism. It's fascism. It's right out of the Soviet Union, man. It's the Soviet show trial. I ain't never seen nothing like it. Remember we were talking to Judge Brown about that today? And, Laurie, did you hear about this? About I was brought this up when me and Bjork were on a show today with Judge Joe Brown and another great black woman jurist named Cheryl Allen, and we were discussing some of the issues of the day, and we were discussing some of the court cases of the day. And I lamented the fact that thanks to that mean girl escapade with the 3 women congressmen, it kind of obscured the fact that the hearing that they were involved in was supposed to address whether or not Congress should issue a contempt citation to Merrick Garland for not turning over the things that the committee wanted to see, the House Oversight Committee wanted to see, and as President Biden invoked executive privilege, which, by the way, I don't know how the hell they can invoke executive privilege since the executive branch didn't generate the damn thing. The special counsel generated it as he interviewed the president. It's not a document that was generated strictly by the executive branch. It was a special counsel investigating the executive branch. But anyway, I digress. They were really trying to determine whether or not they're going to hold him in contempt. Well, they're now talking about exercising or invoking a power that the House of Representatives has not invoked in maybe since the late 19th century. That is the power of inherent contempt, whereas they can order the Sergeant at Arms to go to the Department of Justice building and arrest Merrick Garland for inherent contempt of Congress, but they have to make a specific vote on the floor to invoke that rule. And I predicted that time that might start a constitutional crisis. Have y'all heard this?
Yeah, I heard it, and you're absolutely right. The Sergeant at Arms need to go arrest his ass.
Well, they got to wait, though, for the contempt citation. The contempt citation first. They can't he just can't do it on his own say-so.
And that needs to be carried out. They need to bring him in like any other criminal. Hands behind his back, take his shoes off, take his belt out so he don't further injure himself, and all those things.
Yeah. But he can get out of it. All he got to do is order. All he got to do is order the release of the documents, and then they'll remove the contempt.
Absolutely. Just for him to have the audacity to think that, quote unquote, he's above the law. And that's what he thinks he is. They need to put him back in his place. Roughly, by the way.
It'll tickle me pink to see it. It'll tickle me pink to see it.
Guys, guess what? Remember that clip that I thought I had uploaded and then I had issues trying to download it? Well, I was able to go to Rumble and get it from there and download it and upload it. That redacted news that I talked about earlier about a DHS guy. Before I lose the ability to play it, do y'all want to hear it?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a pretty interesting interview.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
for it.
Talking about some serious corruption going on here, and I know we've talked about it before. We talked about it earlier in the show, but I want to definitely play this thing because I think it's worthwhile for us to discuss as we go into no man's land here in about 20 minutes. All right, so we're going to play this, and then Sarge, mute yourself on your end if you can, because I think when I brought you on, that's when crackling started. So, but I know you can't hang up and call back in, so but your audio is kind of crackly, and I don't know why. But anyway, so I'm going to play this, and that way we can discuss it afterwards, and then we can continue on to any other topics that we usually talk about. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, and launch. This is redacted news from yesterday. What this DHS guy said terrified me to the core.
Well, this story just keeps getting crazier and crazier. You better pay attention. Wake up, America, as to what is happening right now. The more we learn about it, the more troubling it is. The United States government working hand in hand with non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to bring millions of illegal immigrants into the United States. If you don't think this is all planned, then you need to get your head examined. Nothing happens by coincidence. This is all part of a massive operation. J.J. Carroll is a 24-year veteran of the Customs and Border Protection, and what he's just uncovered as part of his new documentary called Treason is just astonishing. J.J. has been kind enough to send me dispatches of the documentary as they are filming this, and it's just jaw-dropping. Speaking with sources at these NGOs who don't want their face on camera, they don't want their voices on camera either. They are what they're telling JJ is just shocking. Listen.
It was Jewish Family Services, and then you had Jewish Family Services who also had these underlying NGOs under them, whether it be Lucid Family Services, Catholic Family Services, and then all these different family services, but they all have the same parent company. So
you would pay Jewish Family Services, and then they would pay the
all of the subcontractors, but they all have the same payee for the most part.
And JJ joins us now, fresh off of that latest trip. JJ, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Clayton. I'm really excited about talking about this. Is the greatest crime that is going to be uncovered in the next several years is the partnership between NGOs and the federal government, and the tune of tens of billions of dollars, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, after this 4-year term of Biden's over. So you don't have to tell us the location because we don't want to give away any sources of who you spoke with, who obviously didn't want their face on camera. But you went into this, I think, with some ideas about how these NGOs were operating, right? These non-governmental organizations, there's thousands of them that are ferreting individuals across the border and then dispersing them across the United States, a lot of them with funding from the United States government. But when you set foot into these interviews, did it stun even you, or did you already know all of these things? No, it did stun me. If I'm being completely honest, I had a very good idea of what was going on, what was transpiring. But when you talk to people that are inside those meetings, so the individual that I talked to was a DHS employee. He was the guy that cut the checks to the NGOs. And he's telling me, he's laying it out for me about what this looks like. He cut checks to Jewish Family Services, Catholic Charities, and a couple other. And I said, tell me about, just give me an example. And he goes, okay, Jewish Family Services, let me explain how this works. The Jewish Family Services, I said, tell me the amount, okay, before you get started. He said, $600 million. And I said, okay, was that 2 or 3 years contract? He goes, no, that was like 2, 3 to 6 months max. Wow. Max. And then he said, what was really stunning to me is this is where the money laundering scheme comes in. So he goes, you have Jewish Family Services at the top. He says they have 50, so let's just say 50 to 100 subcontractors underneath him. After I give them, he's telling me, after I cut that check for $600 million, then those smaller subcontractors that are responsible for food, clothing, housing, whatever that $600 million does not cover or did not cover enough, those subcontractors call us and say, we need 10 million here, we need 5 million here. And I say, well, do you vet it? He goes, no, we're in emergency mode. So we cut the checks immediately to him. Immediately. And he says, but this is where it gets crazy, JJ. He said, when I cut the checks to the subcontractors, I'm cutting the check to the same payee. I'm sending the same funds to Jewish Family Services the same account. So you have Jewish Family Services getting $600 million, but you have 50 to 100 subcontractors that I'm paying, but I'm paying to the same bank account as Jewish Family Services. It's all a lie. It's just all a lie. And I said, okay, well, you cut $600 million check. Are you now tracking that to check? And he goes, listen, you have to understand, JJ, nobody's following the money. No one cares. He says, you have to understand the federal government created a chaotic situation on the border. You have millions of people coming to the border. The Border Patrol, DHS, CBP, FEMA, no one has the resources, manpower to move millions of people from the border into America. That's where the NGOs come in. The NGOs are the movement of people and goods into America. That is the evil partnership between the government and the NGOs.
Did he give you a sense, because we have a segment coming up here tonight, we're going to talk about the United Nations and their collaboration on all of this and bringing in military-aged men. Did he give you a sense of why most of these people that you've been seeing, of course, on camera, are military-aged men between the ages of 25, 35 years old? I think people out there think this idea of this like replacement theory, that just sounds like a conspiracy theory, or the militarization of the United States, sort of a United Nations army inside the United States and Europe to carry out plans for lockdowns, whatever it is. Did he give you a sense of why they all seem to be the same 25 to 35-year-olds and they're all men?
He did, as well as many other investigative journalists that I have contacts with and my sources. They all believe that this is a military-style invasion. Let me just tell you how this looked to us. When you attack a nation, you attack from multiple points of entry. You don't attack, this is not the Middle Ages where I'm attacking the moat and the drawbridge. I'm attacking multiple areas. So once you do that, you attack multiple areas, you make the inroads into America. Now, the United States government, who I believe is the enemy of our people, has already created the pathways, the highways, the routes for the invasion to go into Middle America. So you don't invade a nation and just stay on our borders. You advance. You keep advancing. So when people are talking about the military-age adult males that are pouring into our country, understand that they're anywhere from 50 to 70% of the total illegal population coming into America. We've been sold this lie that it's family units and babies and kids. Yes, there are that. But the single adult military-age men are in the millions, tens of millions in America. You're looking at, you mentioned this perfectly. It's happening in Europe. Nothing happens in the world by happenstance. There's no willy-nilly, well, this is just how it's happened. It just happens that there's tens of millions of illegal military-age adult men pouring into, from the southern hemisphere, pouring into the western nations of the world. It's not by happenstance. And it's hard. I know it's hard to hear somebody say the federal government is doing this. And it's hard to comprehend what the manifestation of this will be. But it will be devastation and destruction. And I always ask this question, Clayton. If you do not agree with my conclusion, if you do not agree with my analysis, then tell me why the federal government under Joe Biden has brought in 30 million illegal aliens into our country. And no one can answer that.
No, and I used to think it was just focused on the election. I don't anymore. I think it's much bigger than that. And I think you're seeing what you're doing, this amazing work, is starting to really pull back the strings on this, pull back the curtain on this, and uncover a massive plot that I don't even think we fully understand how big this is. When you talk about the thousands of NGOs that are operating and delivering these people around the country, can you talk about some of the mechanisms? Did your sources at the DHS and otherwise tell you, how much money they're being given? What sort of tools and access these people are being given? Is there any sort of follow-up at all from the NGOs, from the Department of Homeland Security? Are they following up with monthly, weekly checks to make sure that they haven't killed somebody, they haven't raped somebody, they haven't, gotten DUIs? What sort of things the tools and things are they being given?
Okay, that's a great question. So I asked him that. I said, what does it look like? And he said, before I start to explain this, JJ, I want you to understand the federal government does not run the NGOs. The NGOs run our federal government. And I said, okay, well, explain that to me. Clarify that. He said, you have to understand, we are in a chaotic emergency situation on the border. Tens of millions of people are crossing. Anywhere from 10 to 15,000 a day are still pouring across. The mechanism needed to move these people from the border into the interior is paramount. So the federal government does whatever the NGOs want and ask and demand for. He goes, the NGOs are buying with our money brand new buses, buying Mercedes-Benz vans, $150,000. They're paying nurses. One nurse, we documented in one of the videos I sent you, one nurse made $20,000 a week. A week, not a month, a week. And that's one nurse. So the corruption, okay, let me give you another example. I'll give you two examples. In San Diego, we filmed there just recently. Down in San Diego, just one hotel. Okay, this has been going on for almost 3 years, but just one hotel. There's many more. Let me just give you an example. Ramada Inn on Hotel Circle in San Diego. It's where Hotel Circle is where everybody goes to SeaWorld, the beaches in San Diego. So it could be anywhere from $300 to $500 a night at a Ramada Inn. They have walled off the Ramada Inn. No one from an average person can go in there and go, can I rent a room? It's all gated off. Fences with barbed wire and tarps with paid armed security, and the federal government is paying for every single room in Ramada Inn for almost 3 years now. They're getting 1,500 meals delivered a day at about $30 a meal. Just one hotel. Let's look at the Row Hotel in New York City. It's housing about 5,000 people. For one person to eat for a whole year, and there's illegal aliens that have been there for over a year. This is staggering. To feed one person living in the Row Hotel is $36,000 a year. $36,000 a year. We're not even talking about hospital. We're not even talking about the nurses, the social working, the police presence that's there. Look, I'm going to Chicago in 2 days. I got a police report of hundreds, if not thousands, of call-outs to one shelter. Our police are going to the shelters for rapes, assaults, child molestation, drug dealing, pimping. People have no idea what's happening to our country, but the NGOs are facilitating all of it. Look, the NGOs are child sex traffickers as well. It's hard to, I'm a Catholic Charities is involved, Jewish Family Services, Save the Children in Guatemala. Guatemalan Attorney General and their General Secretary just filed a lawsuit in Texas claiming that Joe Biden, they are funneling over $21 million to an organization called Save the Children. And guess who was on the board? The board of it, Jill Biden. And they're saying this NGO is child sex trafficking into the United States of America, inside of Guatemala, and they are traveling and facilitating the transportation of child sex trafficking into Texas. The media won't even touch it. And Joe Biden, look, things don't happen in a bubble. What did Joe Biden do in Ukraine? He went after that AG and got him fired. Guess what he's doing? He just called down there and had a presser and said to the Guatemalan president, I want those two people fired for corruption. There was no corruption last week until they filed a lawsuit against you and your wife.
Yeah, exactly. Until you start looking into the child sex trafficking that it may involve Jill Biden. Yes. That's what Biden loves to do. He loves to call up Poroshenko, get that prosecutor fired. He's looking into my son. He's looking into Hunter Biden. Get that guy fired, or you're not going to get billions of dollars. Guatemala, we're going to withhold aid to you. We're going to hold back the billions of dollars that we'll send to you. You better get these guys fired. You better not be looking into my wife.
It's frightening, Clayton. And the more that I go into, listen, when I go into this documentary, I feel like I'm an expert on this. But I know going in that I know I don't know certain things because I have to be inside the belly of the beast. the NGO angle that we're taking and we're getting deeper and deeper in. I know I'm not a frightened type of guy ever in my life. I'm telling you that it's frightening. When I came away for the last 2 or 3 jaunts or filming in certain areas across America and interviewing people, I honestly did not understand the size and scope of the machine on the south side and the north side. What Mayorkas has built through billions, hundreds of billions of dollars is staggering. When we get done Joe Biden's term in 4 years, this is just try to wrap your brain around how much power this is. In 4 years, Joe Biden will have spent conservatively on the bottom end $700 billion on illegal aliens. Everyone believes the number has now surpassed $1 trillion in 4 years. And we're conservatively saying $1 trillion.
And
look, I'm going to Chicago.
American people are suffering. Tens of thousands of people being laid off now thanks to skyrocketing inflation, these new minimum wage laws, which we just covered on the show. I mean, driving people out of work because these companies can't afford them, and they're being replaced by automation. They're being replaced by, you have the mayor of New York City this afternoon talking about, we don't have enough lifeguards in New York City, so why do we not? And he said it flat out. We have all of these illegal aliens here that can swim really well. Why don't we hire them as lifeguards? So,
do you even know how racist that is?
Right.
To say, well, because they swam, because they swam across the Rio Grande, they should be lifeguards. The guy is mentally below the par. But look, what we're seeing is a military-style invasion into America. It is being purposely done. And you mentioned briefly the replacement theory. Let's just lay the cards out. CIS.org just came out yesterday. Stephen Miller, who was a top advisor for Trump, pushed it out. Conservatively, almost 52 million people living in the United States of America today are foreign nationals. That is 15% of our population is inside our walls, have no loyalty to America. There is absolute agreement through Congress, they don't even hide anymore, that there's 45 million illegal aliens in our country. 45 million. It doesn't end well on any level.
Well, as Biden said, an unending flood of immigration into the United States. That's what he will call for. That's what he's gotten. And J.J. Carroll is just starting to pull back the layers of this disgusting onion as he dives deeper into this. And we appreciate, J.J., you joining us here as this documentary unfolds. And, of course, be safe in Chicago. You're heading into the belly of the beast there right now. Ground zero for the illegal immigration disaster in the United States. So he'll have updates on us. Hopefully you'll be able to bring us some updates on that when you get back from Chicago. JJ, as always, thank you so much for joining us here. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Clayton.
Yeah, so that was pretty enlightening in a lot of ways. And, my switchboard's going to shut down here pretty soon, so I'm going to bring Sarge back in. And Cinnamon, I am unmuting you. You can stay muted on your end if you like, but speak up if you want to. And then we also have another Skype number that raised their hand. I am unmuting you right now. And let's find out who we got. Skype number, who do we got?
John Doe.
Hey, I thought it might be you, John Doe. Welcome aboard. So just wanting to get everybody unmuted on the switchboard. Robert's line dropped, unfortunately, and Donnie's line dropped. No, as far as Donnie said in the chat room that, the BTR bitch didn't say goodbye, so it was just his line that dropped. But Cinnamon's on, so I don't know, maybe they'll have to fight with each other over her phone, because Cinnamon is unmuted now as well.
Well, you know what we can take out of that audio is that they're absolutely right. You got these NGOs that go to these bureaucrats
these bureaucrats in the State Department, like your Susan Rice and whoever else, and then they go to Biden, and they get whatever they want. He's going to give it to them anyway for them to do what they're doing. That's how that crap works. It's that money laundering scheme. It goes over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for cheering me up, Laurie. I really
about how
appreciate it.
even Joe Biden is,
a
party to this child trafficking and these NGOs and this funding and everything, and even she's got her hands into this corrupt and
She's part of the Biden crime family. It's the Biden crime family. Of course, she's involved.
And then they want to blame Jeannie Thomas. Justice Thomas' wife for getting involved. But here's another point, too. And Sarge, you testified to this. We had the judge say on Hunter Biden's laptop, there was some correspondence to somebody asking the questions, did you find what you need in the boxes behind the car? Well, what's the boxes behind the car? It's the information that Joe Biden had in his garage behind his Corvette. Well, who were they talking about? Well, that stands to be known. We don't know. And he shouldn't have had the goddamn information anyway.
Amen. Boy,
and
you have to get
the thing about
information just to have a prayer of getting to the bottom of this, man, because there's so much that's concealed from us. Without somebody in opposition to these people, we'll never have an inkling of what is what part of the iceberg is below the surface of the water. It's got to be immense.
And think about this. We're getting some stuff, but most of the stuff we're getting is coming out of that courtroom in Florida. And it's mostly about, the Mar-a-Lago raid and how crooked and corrupt that thing was, and what we assume what they were looking for and stuff like that. And thank God we got a judge that's actually doing her job in trying to get information out that the people should know about. Thank God for Judge Cannon.
They didn't have to look, Mike. They brought it and planted it. Who was there that represented Trump that saw what they done? They brought the stuff and planted it.
Yep. Right, and that's the information that came out. She hadn't done what she did and said, look, in fact, this is going to lead to that case is not going to trial before the thing. I mean, if we've seen the clip from Bill Maher, and he's talking about that speculated around Twitter, and he's talking about all these cases against Trump, and there's the thing with Stormy Daniels is a turkey, of course. He goes, well, the thing is not going to happen in Florida, and he also said with the Fannie Willis deal, who cares? He said, well, who cares whether or not she slept with her boy toy? Who cares? Well, the problem is not him sleeping with him. The problem is her paying him the money that was federal money that was supposed to go other places and not to line other people's wallets, right? That's the problem. That's the problem with the Fannie Willis deal. That's how come that she's still in damn trouble. That's how come that the appeals court in Atlanta has taken this thing up because of the corruption. All these things, I mean, corrupt. I've said this about Joe Biden before, guys. They would love to find a way, the Democrats and the deep state would love to find a way to get rid of Joe Biden. Because the corruption, before Joe Biden, the corruption was still there, but it was basically under the table in back rooms and all that stuff where they could get away with it. Because Joe Biden's in office, it's right in front of it's right in front of Americans' faces, right? It's right there. We can see it. We can see the corruption. We can see that not only is he corrupt, but yeah, they're corrupt people in the Republican Party. Yeah, sure. There are people that have people that are, Mitch McConnell's wife was his handler before he left. Okay, all this stuff, and we know what the corruption is with the Ukraine funding. All these people that voted for it probably get a damn piece of the pie, right?
Amen. Those NGOs, man, are at the core of this. And the problem is going to be separating the useful idiots from the people who are Machiavellian. Because a lot of these people who are involved in these NGOs, especially at the ground level, are just useful idiots. They think they're either virtue signaling or they think what they're doing is showing them to be on the side of the angels. We got to go up the food chain to find out who's really behind it. Not just a foot soldier.
And the thing is you look at what's his name in California? He's now running for the Senate. That was the big guy with the Trump impeachment stuff. All right.
Adam Shithead. Shit.
Yep. He's running for Senate.
Yeah.
And he's very corrupt. And not the way we're talking about.
That's an understatement.
He is very corrupt, and the guy needs to be done away with somehow. And hell, I'll say this here. I said it before. I'll say it here. If Steve Garvey, who's running against him, happens to win that race, I don't care whether or not you think he's a liberal Republican or right. He's got the R behind his name, but I don't care if you think he's a liberal Republican. That is an extinction level for the Democrats, because everybody expects Adam Schiff to win that race, right?
Yep.
If and when it going away, probably. So even if Steve Garvey comes close within 2 points, 3, 4 points, whatever 5 points in the single digits, that's an extinction level event, and Lord knows if he ends up winning that race, that's an asteroid killing the dinosaurs event,
It would be. We got a lot of work to do.
And look,
don't expect Donald Trump to take care of it by himself, because he just can't. It's just too much. We're going to do our part.
Right, and that's the thing. I've said this about Donald Trump. Donald Trump thinks he can, if he thinks he can flip these blue states, then who am I to argue with him? All right? No matter argue with the man. Because the coalition he has now is not the same coalition that he's had before. With the minorities, the black and the Hispanics, and the men, the black and Hispanic men, and all this other stuff. It's not the same coalition. So you go, and like I've said it before about these polls, you can't trust the polls, but if the polls are even near correct about 25% of the African American vote and 40+% of the Hispanic vote, that too is an extinction level event for the Democrats. Yeah, you may say, well, they're importing new voters or whatever. Well, that may not help them. That may not help them in this election. It might help them down the road, but it might not help them in this election. I mean, you could be very well seeing Donald Trump, instead of getting 74 million votes, getting somewhere damn near 90 million votes, which is well outside of the margin of error for them to be able to cheat. They would have to give Biden or whomever is going to be, because I don't think it's going to be Biden. I think they're going to pull some shenanigans at the convention there. I still don't think it's going to be Biden. You know.
Yeah.
Guys.
Well, I have to wait and see on that. They know he's a loser. Maybe they think their cheating machine is good enough to put him over the top. I don't know. Maybe they don't think it's going to be as tight as it is, and they can get away with running the bastard. I don't know. But all I know is that we have to be prepared for it. And my biggest single concern in this election is not whether or not Trump can win. My biggest concern is election integrity. I do believe it's possible for them to steal it if it's any way, shape, form, or fashion close.
Right, and I've said this, if the rules are the rules, if you're not playing by the rules that are set, then you're stupid. If the rules in a particular state like California is ballot harvesting, ballot chasing, and all that stuff, you damn well better go chase those ballots and stuff those ballot boxes, because that's the rule, and it's legal.
Exactly. No getting around it, whether you like it or not. Them's the rules.
Them's the rules. And they made fun of Trump about saying, well, when these ballots that were outstanding, there was a number of ballots that were outstanding in Atlanta, and Trump goes, well, find the vote. He's not saying go and cheat. He's saying, well, if these votes were there and they didn't get counted, go find those votes. You know, and count those votes.
They know what he meant. They knew what he meant. That was what they're hanging their hat on to try to derail his campaign. They know none of this is likely to stand up under an appeal, but they're not worried about that. They're trying to derail his campaign, tag him with a tag of felon, and that they figured that would peel enough votes away from him to keep him from being elected. Enough people saying, well, I'm just not going to vote for convicted felon no matter what. That's what they're counting on.
Now, here's the deal, Sarge, though. Particularly in the Stormy trial, the guy should not have let, because they had him rocking, and it didn't. They had Cohen rocking in that trial, and they should not have let that trial end the way it ended on Friday at the time. So I'm hoping that if they can get it going again tomorrow or later on, or tomorrow, it'll be tomorrow, Monday. So if they can get this thing going to where it's going to the point of where they're getting rocking again,